Chapter 101 Disagreement. Yes, Your Royal Highness. Samwell grinned, admiring the expression of the mighty prince at the moment. Prince Oberyn was indeed shocked, because he had also come to Starfall to try to draw the great sword. Any self-satisfied Dorne knight would try it. Of course, he failed. The proud prince would certainly not admit that he was not strong enough, so he attributed it to the fact that this giant sword only recognizes the blood of the Dane family. But now, Prince Oberyn was both embarrassed and shocked that a Reachman had pulled out the Dawn. If he hadn't seen the self-proclaimed sword keeper Lucas Dane standing behind Samwell, he might have thought that the other party had taken a fake to show off deliberately. After a long while, Prince Oberyn pretended to be flat and suppressed a sentence. Well, the young man has good strength. Thank you, Your Highness, for your compliment. The giant sword, Dawn. Let me see. Princess Arianne walked up quickly, her face full of curiosity. Although she had just been defeated by Samwell, the Princess of Dorne not only showed no hostility, but was always friendly in her words and deeds. If someone who didn't know saw it, they would think she and Samwell were lovers. Samwell, however, always kept vigilance and distance from Princess Arianne, because he knew that this was a beautiful snake, attractive but also dangerous, and he had better stay away from her. What's more, he can be regarded as Dorne's archenemy now. Princess Arianne deliberately showed intimacy, and she must have no good intentions. What's so good about a sword? Let's go to my father and the others. Your Royal Highness, you must have something to discuss with them. Prince Oberyn glanced at his niece and nodded expressionlessly. Okay. When a few people found a group of Riverbend nobles, they just finished dividing up. Oh no, they collected the war compensation they deserved. The chief manager, Alf, was in a trance, but when he saw the giant sword behind Samwell, he also looked like he had seen a ghost. He originally thought that Samwell's so-called taking the great sword as collateral was to move the rock along with it, but he never thought that the Knight of the River Bend would actually pull Dawn out of the rock. The other River Bend nobles were not very surprised. After all, they didn't know much about the details of this giant sword. People of the Reach, let's talk. Prince Oberyn said straight to the point. Yes. Earl Randall nodded expressionlessly. Afterwards, everyone entered the castle chamber under the arrangement of the steward. After sitting down, Prince Oberyn made a straightforward request. I want to take Arianne away. In addition, I will also redeem those captured Dorne knights and soldiers. You can make a price. Earl Randall responded. The ransom for knights and soldiers will be paid according to the usual practice, and we will not make things difficult for you. However, if you want to take Princess Arianne away, you must agree to one condition. What condition? Earl Randall pointed at Natalie on the main seat, startling the little girl. You must represent your elder brother and recognize the identity of Miss Natalie Dane. Prince Oberyn also turned his gaze to Natalie, and now the little girl was even more nervous. She only felt that the eyes of the Prince of Dorne were like a poisonous snake, crawling all over her body. Moreover, Prince Oberyn has remained silent, making the atmosphere in the hall even more stagnant and gloomy. Samwell saw that the little girl was about to cry from fright, so he coughed lightly and urged. His Royal Highness, is this request not too much? As long as you open your mouth, Princess Arianne can go with you. Prince Oberyn finally spoke. She is from the Dane family. Why have I never seen her before? Samwell said with a smile. Your Highness, you should know Miss Ashara Dane, right? She is in my territory now. If you don't believe me, you can go and confirm it yourself. And this Miss Natalie, it is her biological daughter, and therefore the first heir to the Dane family. Ashara's daughter. Who is she married to? Why don't I know? Married to Luwin, the patriarch of the Wandering Crow tribe, under the witness of the gods. Prince Oberyn seemed to continue to question, but Earl Randall interrupted impatiently. Come on, Oberyn, your own ***** are all over Dorne, so don't give me any air of devotion to the sanctity of marriage. Prince Oberyn smiled frivolously. It is precisely because I attach so much importance to the sanctity of marriage that I dare not step into its palace lightly. As for my illegitimate children, I never intend for them to inherit anything. Prince Oberyn, we are not interested in your attitude towards marriage. Alarcon Florent also said, now our condition is only one, to admit Miss Natalie's identity, otherwise, don't even think about taking her away. Princess Ariane. Then I won't go, Princess Ariane said with a smile. As she spoke, she also gave Samuel a wink. I just want to go to the river bend. I heard that the men there are as gentle as water. Prince Oberon glared at his niece, then stood up, stood in front of Natalie, and looked at her condescendingly. The little girl huddled pitifully in the chair, her face pale. Samuel also stood up, standing in front of Prince Oberon, and said, Your Highness, bullying a little girl is not something a knight should do. Hey, the Knight of Justice has stepped forward. Prince Oberon whistled, his eyes full of provocation. Samuel Caesar, dare to fight with me. You win, I will admit it, this little girl. If you lose, Ariane will follow me. Enough. Oberon Martell. Earl Randall got up and said angrily, You are now the defeated party. And you are not qualified to raise conditions. Either accept our conditions, or get out of Starfall City. Prince Oberon shrugged. But I can't represent my brother. How about this? The little girl comes back to Sunspear with me, and let my brother meet her in person. Impossible. Samuel refused resolutely. Why don't you ask Prince Doran to come to Starfall City? I heard that he hasn't walked out of the Garden of Flowing Water for many years. I'm afraid that many Dornish people are starting to worry about him. He is dead, so I suggest that it is better to take this opportunity to let Prince Dowlin come out to smash certain rumors. The young man is very courageous. Prince Oberon looked at Samuel with a fierce look in his eyes. Samuel was not afraid. It's okay, at least I don't dare to poison people. Ha ha ha. Prince Oberon burst into laughter suddenly. He took a few steps back, his cold gaze slowly swept across the faces of the nobles of the Riverbend. People of the Riverbend, you are standing on the land of Dorne. Come on. Do you really think we dare not fight another war? Then come, we will wait for you here. Samuel immediately responded forcefully. He knew that the Martell family would never fight another war, not only because it would be difficult for Dorne to support another war after a big defeat, but also because it would seriously damage Prince Doran's revenge plan. Prince Doran's sister, Princess Elia, married Prince Rhaegar Targaryen, but during the Reavers' War, the princess was killed by the rebels who invaded King's Landing, and even her 2 children were killed. Can survive. For this matter, Prince Doran has always wanted to avenge his sister, and even secretly planned to restore the Targaryen dynasty. It is impossible to fight endlessly with the people of Huon at this time. On the contrary, the Reach is actually a potential ally of Dorne. Because in the War of the Reavers, Huon was a staunch royalist party. Although the new king accepted the surrender of the nobles of Huon after the war and did not care too much about them, but in the current political structure of King's Landing, there is no Huon at all, position of nobility. The Tyrell family has therefore been seeking to return to the core of power. Under such circumstances, it is impossible for Prince Dowlin to launch another war. He only wants to reconcile with Huon as soon as possible, and even win an alliance. That's why Samuel has nothing to fear. He knew that Prince Oberon was just bluffing. However, even if it is a bluff, the aura of this Red Viper is really terrifying, and the temperature in the entire chamber seems to have dropped to freezing point. Just when the two sides were at a stalemate, a bachelor walked into the meeting hall. Miss Natalie, the Raven has brought news from King's Landing. King's Landing? Samuel was a little surprised. Natalie took the letter, unfolded it, and handed it to Samuel sensibly. Samuel took a look, the expression on his face changed slightly, and said, Everyone, the hand of the king, Duke John Arryn, is coming to Starfall City. Prince Oberon chuckled, just borrowed the **** to get off the donkey, and said, Okay, just wait for that old guy to mediate. After speaking, he left the meeting hall with Princess Ariane. Alright, the 10th update is complete. The radishes have been thoroughly squeezed dry. In order to make up 10 chapters, I coded until 3 o'clock in the morning yesterday, and I yawned again. And again at work today, and I have been noticed by the leader. Dangerous. Chapter 102. After Prince Oberon left, everyone also dispersed. As soon as Samuel went out, he was stopped by Earl Landau. Father, what do you need from me? Earl Randall nodded, motioning for his son to follow him. The two came to a small room next to them, closed the door, and Earl Landau said, There is something I want to tell you. In order to get the Florens family to agree to send troops to support me, I have promised Earl Alistair that after this battle, you will marry his eldest granddaughter, Elo Florent. Samwell frowned when he heard this. Why do so many people want to marry their girls to me? First came Yangwu City, then Qingting Island, and now there is Brightwater City. Am I so hot? Although the Florens family is a good marriage partner, Samwell really doesn't want to marry a girl he has never met, and this girl is still his cousin in terms of blood relationship. What's more, he has even greater ambitions. Ahem, father, how old is Miss Elo? Earl Randall thought for a while, and said, I remember being 12 years old. Samwell rolled his eyes. That is my underage cousin, father, you must be punished. It's a bit small. We didn't ask you to get married right away. Earl Landau seemed to see his son's reluctance, and frowned. Get engaged first, and then you two will get married when she has monarchy. What kind of tiger-wolf word is this? Samwell felt that although he had been in this world for a year, he still couldn't adapt to the way of thinking of these great lords. It's not good, Samwell said reluctantly. Why don't we use other methods to compensate the Florens family? How about brandy? After all, the Florens family has made great efforts this time, and he is really embarrassed to directly reject others. Earl Randall stared at his son for a while. Why don't you marry Elo? Are you afraid that she won't be pretty? You don't have to worry about it. I've seen it for you. She's a very cute little girl. Why don't you give me some more gold dragons, and deduct it from my share of war indemnity? Samwell continued to discuss. Why are you so reluctant? Do you have another object of admiration? Earl Randall seemed to understand something when he thought of the intimacy between his son and the girl from the Dane family. It can't be Natalie Dane, right? What the hell? Without waiting for Samwell to refute, Earl Randall nodded in a serious manner. Natalie is actually a good marriage partner. Marrying her will allow you to better control Starfall City and High Hidden City. Samwell shut his mouth decisively. He felt that it was good for his father to misunderstand her like this. Otherwise, if he really said that he wanted to marry the daughter of the Duke of Highgarden, he was afraid that Earl Randall would call him wishful thinking. Okay, after some consideration, Earl Landau decided to support his son's idea. Then you can go after Natalie. As for the little girl from Florence family, I will let your brother marry it for you. Samwell breathed a sigh of relief and said with a smile. Yes, father, I'm sure Dickon will be very happy. Ellipsis. Night falls. Samwell finished his dinner and was strolling back to his room. The moonlight is like water, filling the silent courtyard. Samwell walked on the gravel-paved winding path, bowing his head in thought. Hey, Sam, a crisp voice pulled him out of his thoughts, and Samwell stopped, only to find a plump girl sitting on a hanging chair in the yard, swinging on a swing, her long black hair blowing in the wind. Fluttering, her charming face is facing the moonlight, making her even more alluring. Princess Ariane, Samwell smiled politely. I didn't expect you to be so interested. Would you like to sit together? Princess Ariane warmly extended the invitation, and at the same time moved to the side of the hanging chair, indicating that Samwell could sit next to her. It's still not necessary. Is it crowded? Princess Ariane said with a smile. Then I can sit on you. No, Samwell was unmoved. I'm worried that the swing can't support the weight of two people. Princess Ariane rolled her eyes. Are all you River Bend men so confused? Samwell crossed his arms and retorted. Are all of you Dornay women so bohemian? Unexpectedly, Princess Ariane nodded with a smile. Yes, the hot weather and hot food make Dornay men violent and Dornay women wild. Hot pepper and hot wine are flowing in our veins. Let us lose control of ourselves. She licked her rosy lips, and added in an extremely charming tone, especially on the bed. Samwell's Adam's apple rolled, and it was impossible to say that he was not moved. No man would not be moved by such a stunner. But he knew very well that this was a woman who was very good at controlling men with her lust. What's more, the two are now in a state of hostility. Even with the lower head, she can figure it out. She must have bad intentions. Then you can try a colder bed. Samwell bowed and said, Good night, Your Royal Highness. Seeing that Samwell was really about to leave, Princess Ariane became anxious and shouted. Quickly, stop. Samwell Caesar. What else do you need? Ariane Numeros Martel. Princess Ariane jumped off the swing and walked up to Samwell. She was not tall, so she had to look up at the man. However, this angle was not all bad for her, because it allowed her to show Off her full ***** breast. Seeing that the man really deliberately avoided looking at her, Princess Ariane smiled triumphantly. I have a proposal for resolving the current dispute between Riverbend and Dornay. What's the proposal? The rich flower fragrance came out, and Samuel had to admit that it smelled good. In addition to this, there is also a smell of wine. It seems that the Princess of Dornay drank a lot just now. It's very simple. Princess Ariane smiled brightly. I will marry you. Clam. Samuel is really powerless to complain. Why do everyone want to marry him? Could it be that my charm is already so unstoppable? He thought badly. However, this woman is as beautiful as she is beautiful, but he will never marry her. Too dangerous, too troublesome, and too wanton. Princess Ariane frowned when she saw that the man didn't respond, and asked, "What's the matter with you? Shouldn't you be overjoyed that a Dornay princess is going to marry you?" Samuel glanced at her and said calmly, "Your Highness, Prince Doran will not agree to this marriage." The light in Princess Ariane's eyes suddenly dimmed. "You are right, father will definitely not agree." She gritted her teeth and said, "Walder Frey, Gales Rosby, Ben Beesbury. Father's fiancés for me, have always been these old men who are dying. I don't understand why he is so hate me." Samuel knew the real reason. Prince Doran has actually arranged a secret engagement for Princess Ariane, planning to marry her to the former prince who is still in exile on the other side of the narrow sea, Viserys Targaryen. That's why I used these old objects to perfuse my daughter, because I knew she would refuse. In this way, she can prevent her from marrying someone else in advance and breaking the secret engagement. Poor Princess Ariane has been kept in the dark, thinking that her father hates her and even wants to deprive her of her inheritance. Of course Samuel would not tell these secrets to the girl in front of him. After all, he couldn't explain how he knew it. Could it be that you saw it in a book? Princess Ariane was not overly immersed in grief. She quickly raised her head again, looked at Samuel with piercing eyes, and said, "Sam, let me give you a baby." Chapter 103 Denial. Samuel rolled his eyes and refused decisively. "You are drunk, Your Royal Highness, I will send you back to rest." "I'm sober." Princess Ariane hugged Samuel's waist, raised her head, and looked at the man winkingly. "I'll give you a child. Even if my father still opposes our marriage, but as long as we have children, we have a foundation of trust. With your strength and my identity, as long as we unite, we may not be unable to fight for the dominion of Dornay." I have to admit that Samuel was really moved for a moment. But soon, he realized the stupidity of this plan. If he really wants to do this, not only the nobles of the Riverbend will no longer support him, but also the nobles of Dornay will not treat him, and the Martell family will even have a death feud with him. This kind of stupid plan can only be thought up by a crazy woman like Ariane who is about to be blown up by her father and has just suffered a major setback. Prince Doran used his children as pawns for his revenge plan, but never cared about their inner feelings. From this point of view, although Ariane is noble, she is indeed quite pitiful. But no matter how pitiful she is, Samuel cannot betray his position and interests to help her. Ahem. Just as Samuel was thinking about how to get rid of Princess Ariane's entanglement, there was a sudden coughing sound in the courtyard. Samuel turned his head and saw his father, Earl Landau, standing at the gate of the courtyard at some point. Earl Randall's expression at this time was extremely complicated, and it was difficult to describe in words. Samuel's mood at this time is similar. "What is this?" Princess Ariane finally let go of Samuel after seeing Earl Randall. At last she still knew some reserve. The atmosphere in the courtyard was quite delicate for a while. Samuel was about to say something, but Earl Landau had already turned around, as if he didn't want to disturb his son's good business. Samuel didn't know what to say to explain to his father. "It's not what you think. This is too vulgar." Earl Landau, who was about to disappear from sight, turned his head and glanced at Samuel for the last time, as if saying, "Natalie and Ariane, which one are you after?" Waiting for the figure of Earl Randall to disappear completely, Samuel also took the opportunity to run away. "Princess, I'm leaving first, and you should go to bed early, good night." When the word good night was said, Princess Ariane could no longer find Samuel. She stomped her feet angrily, and cursed through gritted teeth. A man without guts. Princess Ariane stood alone in the courtyard, looking up at the starry night sky. They were so beautiful, like countless ships on the green blood river. Gods, she couldn't help asking, are you really unwilling to give me a suitable husband? In order to resist her father's arrangement, Princess Ariane also tried to find a husband by herself. She seduced Renly Baratheon, but the proud Duke of Storm's End pretended not to see it. She also fled privately and wanted to marry Velas Tyrell of Highgarden, but she was still captured by her father. Now, even a pioneer knight dared to refuse her courtship, which made Princess Ariane doubt her own charm. No, Princess Ariane shook her head to get rid of this ridiculous thought. Does her beauty need to be questioned? Every man who looks at her has naked longing in her eyes, and she has never lacked fanatical suitors. Dre, Denzel Dart, Daemon Shad, the young male nobles of Dorne, almost no one does not surrender under her skirt. But unfortunately, none of them could really make her fall in love, so they could only refuse. Perhaps the gods wanted to punish her for being cruel, so that every man who could make her heart reject her equally cruelly. Princess Ariane had a self-deprecating smile on her lips. After an unknown amount of time, a shooting star pierced the sky, dragging out a long white streamer. Princess Ariane looked at the shooting star with misty eyes, and murmured, "Warrior Queen Nymeria, is this your heroic spirit? Your brilliance is so dazzling that it is no worse than any man." Her face became resolute again. "So will I." Ellipsis. The next morning, Samwell had just finished his breakfast when he met Gavin, who had rushed over from Yingzui Island. The young steward came to Starfall City to organize young and strong Dorne to go to Yingzui Island to build a castle, and at the same time brought a piece of news. "Sir Garland and Miss Marjorie are coming." "Yes, sir." According to the letter, they estimate that they will arrive at Yingzui Island in 3 days. Samwell nodded, indicating that he understood. He was not too surprised by this. After all, the River Bend Allied forces had won such a big victory, and the Tyrell family would definitely send someone to get involved. "Okay, you will be in charge of Starfall City. I will go back to Yingzui Island to meet them," Samwell said immediately. "Yes, master." Gavin was actually very puzzled as to why the master went back to greet him so early, but he didn't ask further. In fact, Samwell just wanted to use this reason to temporarily avoid the Princess of Dorne. Otherwise it would be a bit embarrassing to see her. After explaining to Gavin, Samwell went to explain the situation to his father and uncle. Finally, he had to say goodbye to the new owner, Natalie. When the little girl was found, she was taking etiquette lessons under the guidance of an old nun. "Master Caesar." Natalie was excited when she saw Samwell, and was about to run up to say hello, but was stopped by the nun beside her. "Miss, you have to pay attention to your manners." Natalie pouted aggrievedly, rubbing her fingers uneasily on the purple pleated skirt. As a result, the nun gave him another lecture. Samwell strode forward, and under the old nun's terrified and angry eyes, he rubbed the little girl's head vigorously, completely broke up the originally incomparably dignified Lady Bunn on her head. "Okay, let's stop here today," Samwell said. The nun dared not speak out, so she had to back down. "Thank you, Sam." Natalie lifted her skirt and jumped excitedly, returning to the original unrestrained savage state. "Treat your servants with a bit of dignity," Samwell instructed the ignorant little girl, "otherwise they won't know who is the master here." "Oh." Natalie nodded obediently. "How does it feel? Is it fun to be a lady in the castle?" "It's okay. It's just a little tired, and..." Natalie lowered her voice, as if she was afraid of being heard. "And those old men are so scary." "There's nothing to be afraid of. They are no nobler than you, so don't be afraid of them. Besides, I'm also a master. Do you think I'm scary?" Natalie shook her head. "That's right." Samwell rubbed the little girl's hair again. It was soft and comfortable, and he was a little addicted to touching it. "Okay, I'm here to say goodbye to you this time." "Where are you going?" Natalie suddenly became nervous. "I want to go back to Yingzui Island." "I'll go with you." Natalie immediately grabbed Samwell's sleeve. "There are so many distinguished guests in Starfall City, how can you, the master, leave? It's too impolite." Seeing the little girl's depression, Samwell comforted him. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." "Okay." Natalie let go of Samwell reluctantly. "Then if you see your mother, you must greet my mother. It's best to bring her to Starfall City. If your mother was willing to come back, she would have come back long ago." However, Samuel decided to give the little girl some hope. Okay, if I see her, I will tell you that you are being bullied here, and ask her to help you. Okay, Natalie said happily, tell her, I was bullied terribly. Chapter 104 The Baron of Yingzhou. 3 days later, on a sunny afternoon, Samuel met the team from Highgarden at Eagle Mouth Island. Walking in the front row on horseback was a young man in shining armor. His appearance was somewhat similar to Knight of Flowers, Loris Tyrell, but he was fatter and more masculine. There is a golden rose pattern printed on the chest of the armor, but there are two, representing that he is the second son of the Tyrell family, Garland Tyrell. Welcome to Yingzhou Island, Sir Garland. Samuel stepped forward and bowed. Sir Caesar. Garland got off his horse and gave Samuel a warm hug. I heard about your great victory. It's really exciting, thanks to the blessing of the 7 gods. Samuel said modestly. While speaking, he saw a familiar figure getting out of the carriage in the middle of the team. Marjorie Tyrell. The Duke's daughter is wearing a green dress today, with a rose made of gold thread on her chest. Her soft brown hair is coiled into a lady's bun, covered with a black silk hairnet embellished with diamonds, and her ears are hanging wearing a pair of drop-shaped gemstone earrings. It just matched the sapphire embedded in the ribbon collar around her throat. Sam, Marjorie called out to her knight affectionately. Miss Marjorie. Samuel quickly stepped forward to salute, but just as he bent down, he found a white and slender hand stretched out in front of him. So, he pressed a kiss between Marjorie's fingers very gentlemanly. Quick, tell us about your glorious battle. Margaret waved her fists excitedly, as if she wanted to be there in person. Samuel smiled slightly, and while leading the two inside, he began to tell the whole story of the previous battle. Marjorie is a good listener, and she can always respond at the most appropriate time, amazed, worried, nervous, excited, nothing can trouble her. Moreover, the look of admiration in the girl's eyes can make any man want to stop. It was a wonderful battle. After listening to Samuel's story, Marjorie concluded, it should be the biggest victory for the Riverbend army since the War of the Reavers. Garland, right, quote, yes. Garland nodded, obviously agreeing with his sister's evaluation. Thanks to my father's commanding skills and Sir Alarcon's strong support. Samuel said, modestly, you're not bad either. Margaret smiled. I heard that you led 700 cavalry to smash the Dornish army formation. I really want to see your heroic appearance at that time. There will be a chance. Samuel leaned slightly. As your knight, I can charge for you at any time. Hearing this, the smile on Marjorie's face became even sweeter. Samuel led the two of them to visit their territory again. Since the castle hadn't been built yet, it looked a bit shabby and there wasn't much to see. However, Margaret was always in high spirits. She didn't dislike the shabby territory of Samuel at all, and warmly waved and greeted the residents there. Food, and to talk to them personally about condolences. Noble identity, beautiful face, kind gesture. This daughter of the Duke completely conquered the citizens of Yingzhou Island in just one afternoon. Even the savages who don't have much sense of belonging to the Reach are willing to cheer for her, pray for her, and maybe even fight for her. It's no wonder that in the original book, the young girl had just arrived in King's Landing, and she let the most prosperous city in Westeros be overwhelmed by her charm. Samuel watched all this from the side, and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Some people are indeed born to be loved by the public. As for whether Marjorie's attitude is from the heart, or deliberately to win people's hearts, it is actually not important. Her dedication is real, and the people's love for her is also real. In this stratified world, how many nobles can really bend down like her and talk to the people at the bottom? Even if Samuel asks himself, he can't do it. Although he comes from a more equal world, he has always worked hard to provide good living conditions for his subjects, but if he is really asked to sit in a group, he can't speak well, and his body is full of sweat. Among the stinking low-level people, talk to them cordially. He really doesn't have the patience. When night fell, Samuel held a grand bonfire dinner for the two distinguished guests. In the banquet, Marjorie undoubtedly became the protagonist. She even made almost all the citizens of Yingzhou Island sing Song of the 7 Gods together. You must know that since Samuel did not force the people to convert, there are many people who believe in other gods. However, under the influence of the Duke's daughter's charm, it seems that even the barrier of Belief is no longer a problem. Sam. Marjorie drank a lot of brandy, her little face was flushed, and she was extremely charming. Under the light of the fire, "It's so hot, accompany me to the beach." "It's my pleasure." The two stayed away from the crowd and came to a secluded beach. The slightly cool sea water surges up from time to time, driving away the dryness of the bonfire. Banquet. "Thank you, Sam." "You're welcome, Miss Marjorie." "I'm still worried that I won't entertain you well." "I'm not talking about that." Marjorie shook her head. "I'm talking about those refugees from the Bay." Samuel suddenly said, "You don't have to be polite about this. I promised you that I will let them live a good life. You are an upright knight, and even more so, a wise lord." Margaret said seriously, "It's the greatest luck for those refugees from the River Bay and those savages to be your subject." "Thank you for your compliment. However, I think they might prefer you to be their lord." Marjorie giggled when she heard the words, "I can't protect them from the enemy." "It depends on you, brave knight. Oh, I almost forgot. It's time to change the name." As she spoke, Marjorie took out a piece of parchment with a golden rose seal wax from her bosom, and said to Samuel with a smile, "Kneel down, my knight." Samuel immediately realized what was about to happen. Although he had expected this day, his heart couldn't help beating at this moment. Of course he wouldn't say stupid things like his castle wasn't built yet, and immediately knelt down on one knee in front of Marjorie. "I, Marjorie Tyrell, daughter of Mace Tyrell, in the name of Governor of the Reach, Warden of the South, and Duke of Highgarden, canonize Samuel Caesar as Baron of Eagle's Isle. From this day forward, the Caesars are the hereditary baronial families of the Reach." Marjorie handed the letter of appointment to Samuel, and said with a smile, "Get up, Baron Yingzeu. In addition, your baron's ring, seal, dress suit and other things are all in the suitcase. Remember to get them. There are also family crests and clan languages. If you think about it, you can buy it at any time. Tell me." Samuel didn't care about the dress coat of arms at all at this time, but stared at his attribute panel closely. At this moment, it really changed a lot. Character: Samuel Caesar. Title: Baron +1. Territory: Yingzui Island. Vassal: Lucas Dane Knight. Strength: 4.44. Dexterity: 1.25. Spirit: 2.17. Charge into battle: 1/100th. Chapter 105 Arrival. The night was dark, the dinner party was over, everyone fell asleep one after another, and Yingzui Island was shrouded in silence. Samuel was lying on the bed but not sleepy. He studied for a while on the brackets +1, behind his title on the attribute panel, and finally guessed that this is likely to be a free attribute point. So, which attribute should be added to it? Now his most powerful attribute is strength, which is as high as 4.44, which is far superior to normal humans. Maybe he can go to the famous strongman, Magic Mountain, in Game of Thrones. But now that he has found a stable way to increase the strength attribute, swallowing gold and silver, then there is no need to waste this precious freedom attribute on strength. Similarly, a way to improve the spiritual attribute has also been found. Although only one kind of grass has been found, Samuel has already had some ideas, and he should be able to find other foods to improve in the future. The only thing that confuses him is the agility attribute. His current agility is only improved by his own training, so it is only 1.25. He is only a little taller than normal, but because the weapon he wields is too heavy, this agility is obviously not enough, and this is also his biggest weakness at present. Thinking of this, Samuel made up his mind. He held his breath and focused all his attention on the column of agility. Sure enough, the value of the agility attribute jumped from 1.25 to 2.25, and the brackets +1 behind the Baron also disappeared. Samuel only felt a lightness all over his body, as if the air around him was helping him move. He tried jumping out of the bed, dashing left and right in the small room, jumping, and found that his movement speed had really improved greatly. Although he may not be able to match those knights who specialize in agility, such as Red Viper Prince Baron, at least he is no longer a drag on his strength. Moreover, when his title continues to increase in the future, there should be more free attribute points, and even more next time. If this is the case, then he doesn't have to worry about not being able to find food to improve the Agility attribute. Thinking of this, Samuel returned to bed contentedly, and fell asleep peacefully. The warm sunshine in the morning reflected the summer sea sparklingly. The sky was so blue that there was not even a trace of impurities, as if feeling the majesty of the king's hand, and even the wind and waves were much smaller. Escorted by the 5 warships of the royal fleet, the flagship of the hand of the king, Duke John Aaron, slowly docked at the pier of Starfall City. The guards with bright armor jumped out of the boat nimbly and spread out, keeping the onlookers out. After that, I saw an old man with gray hair slowly walking down the gangway with the help of a maid. The nobles who came to greet him immediately bowed down and saluted. After Prince Oberon finished his salute, he looked at Duke John and said, "Master Duke, you are much older than when we met last time." The hard work of the long journey made the old Duke unable to straighten his back. After hearing Prince Oberon's slightly teasing words, he didn't feel angry at all, and said with a smile, "I am getting old every day, and I believe you are too. On this point, the gods are the fairest." Yes. Prince Oberon stared into Duke John's eyes, and his tone turned cold, "but the fairness that the gods cannot bestow, we can only take it by ourselves. Your lord, you owe the Martell family a fairness. Do you remember?" Duke John still had a smile on his face. "Prince Oberon, you are still the same as you were then. However, when I came to Dornay to negotiate with your brother, I only promised peace, but never fairness." The old prince paused and sighed. "If you want peace, you will inevitably sacrifice some justice." Speaking lightly, Prince Oberon sneered, "It wasn't you who died. It's me too." Duke John said seriously. The corners of Prince Oberon's eyes twitched, as if he was suppressing his anger. "In this case, I can only seek our justice with the sword in my hand." Duke John sighed again, his tone full of exhaustion and helplessness. "Swords can't be fair, they will only make everything worse." After speaking, he ignored Prince Oberon and continued on, greeting the nobles of the river bend. One by one, this time, the conversation between the two parties did not have the smell of gunpowder just now. Although the nobles of the riverbend were also royalists during the Snatcher War, they did not cause fatal damage to the rebels after all, nor did they die tragically like the Martell family. If King Robert was here, he might still have a quarrel with Earl Randall who defeated him back then, but Duke John has always valued peace. "Lord Randall, I heard about the great reputation of your eldest son in King's Landing. Where is he?" "I'll see you." Earl Randall rarely squeezed out a smiling face. "Your Excellency, I'm really sorry, Sam is currently welcoming the Tyrell family on the Eagle's Mouth Isle. I'll introduce you when he arrives in Starfall City." Duke John nodded with a smile, and was about to say something when he suddenly heard a sharp voice behind him. "It's hot in here. It's hot in here. I don't want to be here. I want to go back. I want to go back." Everyone followed the prestige, and saw a woman walking off the boat, holding a 4 or 5-year-old boy in her arms, crying nonstop. "I'm sorry, everyone." Duke John looked back and began to apologize. "That's my son Robert. He has a louder voice, but he is still relatively timid." Everyone expressed relief. Only Prince Oberon said indifferently, "My Lord Duke, I thought you were here to mediate the dispute, but I didn't expect you to come out to play with your wife and son." "That's fine, I can personally show you the desert and mountains of Dornay, and I promise you will be worth it." This line. Duke John smiled and didn't answer. In fact, he is also quite helpless. He has no intention of bringing his wife and children with him when he comes to Dornay this time. It is his wife Lisa who insists on coming, and there is nothing he can do about it. At this time, the Duchess Lisa Tully also walked in front of the crowd. She was much younger than the old Duke. She looked about 30 years old. She had the typical blue eyes and red hair of the Tully family, and her lips were thin. It was due to the exhaustion of the journey. His face was pale and his spirit was not good. I don't know if it was because of seeing so many strangers suddenly. The boy in Mrs. Lisa's arms finally stopped crying, but buried his head in his mother's chest, refusing to lift it up. Mrs. Lisa smiled and saluted the nobles, and then tried to get the son in her arms to come out to say hello, but it was unsuccessful. "Sorry, my lords, Robert was frightened by the heat here when he came to Dornay for the first time." Seeing that Prince Oberon seemed to be unable to control his poisonous tongue again, Princess Ariane hurriedly said, "Madam, Don't worry, when Robert eats Dornay's delicious food, he won't cry anymore. Lady Lisa also responded with a smile. You are Princess Ariane, you are really beautiful. No wonder my brother Edmure has been thinking about it. The atmosphere finally eased down again. Natalie also plucked up her courage, showed the aura of being the host, and went up to greet Duke John's family. The old prince looked at the little girl with a bit of a sigh. Like, it's really too similar. Seeing you, I seem to see the glamorous Dane girl at the Harrenhal tournament back then. Hearing this, all the nobles in Huon showed joy. Duke John's words almost represent the royal family's acknowledgement of Natalie's identity. Princess Ariane's complexion became even more gloomy. She was at the end of the crowd, grabbed her uncle, and said in a low voice, Uncle, why did you deliberately provoke John Arryn? Don't you know, I know what I'm doing. Prince Oberyn said indifferently, do you think John Arryn will favor Dornay? If I don't say those few words, don't worry, I have my own plan. Chapter 106 Family Crest. This is the coat of arms of the Caesar family. Marjorie took a piece of parchment from Samwell and looked at it carefully. On a sky blue background, a lifelike two-headed falcon is painted. The whole body of the eagle is gray-brown, only the tail is pure white. Behind the two-headed eagle, a long sword with burning flames and a sword are crossed. A warhammer entwined with lightning. A beautiful coat of arms. Marjorie commented, and then asked, what about the ethnic language? Samwell shrugged. I haven't figured out the language yet. In fact, Samwell had thought about it a long time ago. Now that the name of Caesar is used, the coat of arms and clan language are actually ready to come out. There is nothing wrong with the coat of arms, just a little modification on the basis of the Roman eagle, but the famous saying of Caesar that has been passed down through the ages. I come, I see, I conquer. Samwell is really not qualified to use it now. He didn't want to replace it with other proverbs, so he could only leave it blank temporarily. Waiting for the future. Okay, don't worry, you can think about it slowly. After all, this is the motto left to the descendants of the Caesar family, and it needs some thought. Marjorie put away the parchment and smiled sweetly at Samwell. At this moment, the daughter of the Duke is standing at the bow of the boat. The warm sea breeze blows her blue tunic dress, outlining her perfect and voluptuous body curves. Her soft, long brown hair is blown behind her head, revealing a swan elegant and slender fair neck. Seems to have noticed Samwell's gaze, and a trace of charm appeared on Margaret's impeccable facial features. Does it look good? Good looking. Samwell was very honest. Marjorie rolled her cute eyes. Then you can't stare at the lady like this, it's very rude. Then I'd rather be rude a few more times. Margaret couldn't help but feel secretly pleased. She raised her slender willow eyebrows, but still gave the bold knight beside her a glare. Unfortunately, there is no lethality. Margaret helped the shoulder straps that had slipped, and asked, Sam, have you ever thought about what kind of person you will become in the future? I haven't thought about it. Why didn't you think about it? Margaret obviously didn't believe it. I have no ambitions. Marjorie rolled her eyes again. Can a person with no ambition establish a territory in Yingzui Island, and defeat the Dane family, and even the coalition forces of the Western Lords of Dornay? I just have no ambitions, and I'm not weak to be bullied. Samwell shrugged and asked, how about you, Miss Marjorie? Actually, I don't know. Margaret leaned over the side of the boat, looking at the waves jumping below. I know, you know. Marjorie looked sideways at Samwell, with disbelief written all over her face. Samwell grinned. I guess you want to be queen. The expression on Marjorie's face froze. Before she could figure out how to respond, Samwell said again, this is probably the biggest dream of every noble lady. Ha, you are right. Marjorie stroked her hair, trying to hide the strangeness on her face, but Prince Joffrey is not yet of age. Soon. The smile on Samwell's face became brighter. I heard that His Royal Highness Joffrey loves the people like a son, and everyone in King's Landing is praising his kindness and wisdom. If you can marry him, we'll definitely be happy. Really? Marjorie turned to look at the knight beside her. Why haven't I heard such a rumor? It is true. I heard the bard say that this Prince Joffrey is like Prince Aerion, and must be a great king in the future. Marjorie froze for a moment. You mean, Bright Flame, Aerion Targaryen? Right. Marjorie's face suddenly became very strange. That is a lunatic who thought he was a dragon. and then drank wildfire and died. Really, maybe I remembered wrongly, it should be Prince Maegor. Maegor? Cruel, is that so? That might be Prince Reg. That's an idiot who choked himself to death while eating lamprey pie. Marjorie finally understood that the man in front of her was teasing her, and snorted softly, Samwell Caesar. What are you implying? Samwell spread his hands, his face innocent. I'm just repeating what the bard said. Hey, it's a pity that I don't have a good memory, and I always remember the names of people wrong. History is not good either. Marjorie added, and then giggled herself. My father has always been a headache for my education, otherwise why do you think he drove me out of the house? I thought it was because you ate too many golden-tail shrimps. Marjorie laughed while laughing, but Samwell took the opportunity to see a lot of spring scenery. Ellipsis. Happy time is always short, and the ship soon arrived at the pier of Starfall City. Marjorie also tidied her clothes, put away her smiling face, and turned into a dignified and elegant noble lady again. She pointed to the royal fleet docked in the pier and said, "Look, Duke John has arrived." Samwell nodded, full of expectations for the top powerful figure of the Baratheon dynasty. Let's go, let's meet the Prime Minister. The two of them entered the castle all the way. They wanted to meet Jon Arryn, but they were told that the Prime Minister had just arrived today and had already rested due to the exhaustion of traveling all the way. Samwell had no choice but to let it go. After bidding farewell to Marjorie and Garland, he was preparing to meet Earl Landau. As a result, I met Natalie on the way. Sam, the little girl ran over excitedly, you are finally back. Any news about my mother? Samwell shook his head. Sorry, Natalie, your mother is not in Yingzui Island. Seeing that the little girl's eyes dimmed, he quickly added, but I have already told Gavin that if I see your mother, I must pass on your words. Yeah, Natalie became happy again, walking side by side with Samwell, while chirping about the situation of Starfall City in the past few days. When she heard her talk about how everyone greeted Duke John at the pier, Samwell immediately noticed the conflict between Prince Oberyn and Duke John. Actually, this is also expected. When the War of the Reavers just ended, Prince Oberyn was ready to raise troops to support the former Prince Viserys Targaryen to avenge the tragic death of his sister, nephew and niece. Fortunately, Duke John came to Dorne in person, reaching a peace agreement with Prince Doran made this operation come to an end. But Prince Oberyn has never forgotten his hatred, and has been trying to complete revenge in various ways. As for Duke John, who stopped him more than 10 years ago, Prince Oberyn will naturally not have a good face. Sam, I got a title recently. What title? The little girl straightened her chest and said proudly. Generous Natalie. Not bad title. What good deeds have you done recently? No. The little girl also became puzzled. I have been familiar with various affairs in the castle. These days, alas, being a lord is so annoying. Then how could? Samwell suddenly understood. The so-called generosity probably refers to the generosity to the enemy. This is ironic that the little girl is about to give away all the family property of the Dane family. Sam, do you think I'm going to give some oatmeal to the poor sometime? Well, it should. Samwell held back a smile, hesitating whether to tell her the truth. Okay, then I'll go tomorrow. Natalie happily made a decision. Forget it, let's not talk about it. Samwell feels that smart people always have too many troubles. And like Natalie, what a joy. Chapter 107 The Armored Knight at the Dinner Party. As night fell, the banquet hall of the Dane family castle was brightly lit with candles. The generous Miss Natalie hosted a banquet here to entertain all the distinguished guests. Samwell specially put on the baronial gown that he just got. The exquisite tailoring technique and the high-quality silk material highlighted his tall and straight figure. The red velvet pom-pom is dignified in its solemnity, and majestic in its seriousness. So when the young Baron Yingzeu stepped into the hall, he immediately attracted many fiery eyes. If you think about the fact that this person has just achieved a glorious victory, and that he has faintly controlled the power of Starfall City, the noble ladies present almost rushed forward. Sam, Marjorie Tyrell waved at the young Baron. The corners of Samwell's mouth turned up slightly. You must know that the daughter of the Duke would not greet herself so unreservedly at the banquet before, but after the Starfall City War, he could feel that Marjorie's attitude was obviously more cordial than before. Of course, he also knew that he was still far away from truly winning the favor of High Court. Rose. Margaret's move was just to win over a promising vassal. Miss Marjorie. Samwell stepped forward and bowed. Your beauty makes all the stars tonight be eclipsed. This is not bragging. Marjorie is really beautiful tonight. She is wearing a dignified and elegant palace dress. The design with a waist and back reveals the charm of a girl within a suitable range. A drop-shaped amethyst the necklace hangs in front of her elegant and slender neck. The almost perfect and delicate face coupled with the eyes that are as bright as water perfectly blend noble, pure and charming temperament together. Margaret smiled sweetly, and was about to return the gift, but heard another voice next to her ear. No one outshines the light of the stars, Sir Caesar. Marjorie turned her head, and saw that Princess Ariane had come to her side at some point. This Dornay princess is wearing a deep red close-fitting long dress, and her whole body is like a burning flame. Her eyes and graceful figure are enough to ignite a fire in the hearts of all men. Your Royal Highness. Margaret felt threatened instinctively. The person in front of you is no longer a knight, but the Baron of Yingzhou. You can call him Lord Baron or Lord Caesar. Sam. Princess Ariane chose the most affectionate title. You haven't met Lord John yet, have you? Come, I'll take you there. As he spoke, he stretched out his hand to hold Samwell's arm. Samwell quickly took the opportunity of calling the passing waiter to avoid Ariane's hand. Without a trace, he took out 3 wine glasses from the waiter's tray, stuffed a glass for each of the 2 women in front of him, and said, "Come on, tonight's starlight, cheers." But when he drank the wine in the glass, he found that the 2 women in front of him were just holding the wine glasses, looking at him with half smiles. Samwell cursed secretly, and was thinking about how to get out, when he saw a figure walking in the door. Natalie Dane. Ha, the master is here, I'm going to say hello. Without waiting for a response after speaking, he walked quickly to the door. Natalie is also dressed up tonight. She is dressed in a bright yellow dress, which looks noble and cute, but the little girl is obviously not used to this kind of complicated and bloated dress, and her walking posture is a bit stiff. However, this youthfulness and the weakness in the eyes can easily arouse the man's desire for protection. Miss Natalie, your beauty eclipses all the stars tonight, Samwell said again without any shame. In praising Marjorie, Sean, Master Caesar. Natalie saw that Samwell seemed to have seen a savior, but under the gaze of many eyes, she still tried to maintain her restraint. You are also tonight, well, your face is radiant. Need to get her a rhetoric teacher. Samwell stretched out his arm for the little girl to hold, saying, let's go to see Lord John. Also, remember next time, as the master, you should arrive earlier. Oh, Natalie muttered softly, I actually went to look for you just now, but you weren't here. What did you say? Samwell didn't hear clearly. Nothing. The 2 came to the center of the hall, where Duke John was talking with Earl Randall and Sir Alacon. This is the first time Samwell has seen this old man who can be called the most powerful in the 7 kingdoms, and he feels a little disappointed. Because Duke John really has a little hand of the king, and he doesn't have the aura of the former prime minister, just like an ordinary old man next door. Moreover, I don't know if he is not in good health, or he is too tired from the long journey, and he still needs the help of a maid. Huh, that woman doesn't look like a maid. Who is the woman supporting Duke John? Samwell asked in Natalie's ear. Oh, that's the Duchess. Lisa Tully. Samwell's face changed slightly, and he stopped suddenly. What's the matter? Natalie asked, puzzled. Just then, there was a commotion at the door. Everyone looked back and was dumbfounded. Because a knight in full armor walked into the banquet hall. Boom, 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 ellipsis. The sound of heavy footsteps seemed to be stepping on everyone's hearts, making them feel chills, especially when they saw the naked eyes of the armored knight, which were like poisonous snakes. However, no one dared to step forward to stop it, because the blazing sun halberd pattern on the chest of the armor had already announced the identity of the visitor. The Red Viper, Prince Oberon Martel. Boom. Prince Oberon stood still about 10 steps away from Duke John, and smashed the spear in his hand heavily to the ground. This spear is 8 feet long, taller than a human being, and the leaf-shaped spearhead is shining with a cold black light. No one will suspect that it is covered with a blood-sucking throat ceiling. Poison. John Aaron. Prince Oberon shouted aggressively. Today, I will take the justice that belongs to the Martell family with my own hands." The loud voice reverberated in the hall, instantly drowning out the originally cheerful atmosphere. Everyone fell silent, stunned by Prince Oberon's actions. Princess Ariane watched her uncle's actions, but did not step forward to stop her. Because she has already learned about her uncle's plan. In this upcoming negotiation, Dawn actually has no bargaining chip. After all, they lost. What you can't get on the battlefield, you can't get it on the negotiating table. And her father, Prince Doran, does not intend to continue fighting, which makes Dorne's current situation very embarrassing. If the people of Huon know about this, they will definitely suppress Dawn wantonly at the negotiating table. So, in order to show toughness and force Jon Arryn and the people of the river to make appropriate concessions, Prince Oberyn planned this show. Duke Jon looked at the menacing Prince Oberyn. His face did not change at all. The old Prime Minister straightened up suddenly, finally showing the majesty he should have as the hand of the king in charge of the power of the Seven Kingdoms. He met Prince Oberyn's eyes without any fear, stepped forward a few steps, and asked in an old but powerful voice, "Oberon, what kind of fairness do you want?" Prince Oberyn suddenly raised the spear, pointed the black spearhead at Duke Jon. 13 years ago, you came to Dorne. For the sake of the so-called peace, you forced our Martell family to swallow the unfair bitter fruit. Today, you came again, but this time, I will not give in easily for your so-called peace. Duke Jon smiled slightly. You haven't heard of my peace plan yet. How do you know it's unfair to Dorne? Then you should talk about your peace plan. Prince Oberyn said coldly, I hold my spear and armor, and I am all ears. Samwell looked at the scene in front of him, and realized why Prince Oberyn was acting in this play. This Red Viper deliberately put on a crazy posture that would not give up. Facing such a dangerous lunatic, if Duke Jon wants to quell this dispute, he may have to consider giving Dorne some dignity. I have to say that Prince Oberyn may seem reckless, but in fact there are subtleties in his roughness, and he is not really a reckless person. The peace plan is just to sit down, let's talk together. Duke Jon really began to try to appease the armored knight in front of him. I actually have some ideas, I am about to talk, say, cough, cough, cough. Duke Jon coughed suddenly while he was talking, and the cough got worse and worse, until finally he couldn't straighten up. Honey, what's wrong with you? Mrs. Lisa hurried forward to support her husband. Cough, cough, cough. I didn't. Cough, cough. Thing. Cough, cough, cough. He must have choked, Prince Oberyn kindly reminded. As soon as the words fell, Duke Jon suddenly coughed up a big mouthful of blood, and then fell to the ground with a plop. Lady Lisa let out a terrified scream. She knelt beside her husband, shook his body vigorously, then raised her head suddenly, pointed at Prince Oberyn, and shouted hoarsely. It's you. You killed him. You poisoned him. This sudden change was like a boulder falling into a calm lake, and the banquet hall exploded in an instant. But Samwell stood there motionless, looking at the chaotic scene in front of him. He felt chills all over his body. Shouts, screams, accusations, howls, seemed to be very far away from him, like a world apart. He watched Jon Arryn vomit blood, Earl Randall calling out to the guards, Esser Alarcon roaring angrily, Prince Oberyn trying to explain, and Lady Lisa distraught, looking at everyone terrified and angry, at a loss. The world is spinning, the light and shadow are fragmented, the banquet hall seems to be a theater stage, and the stage is full of lifelike puppets. Their movements were stiff, as if they were being pulled by invisible threads. And in the darkness where the stage lights couldn't reach, a pair of gray-green eyes were quietly watching all this. The deep fog obscured the breath of conspiracy, but there was still a mocking voice, as if telling the biggest mystery in this Game of Thrones. Chaos is the ladder. Chapter 108 Dying. The star curtain hangs low, and the silver moon is like a knife. Pale moonlight shrouded the cold courtyard. The tall oak trees in the courtyard swayed their branches in the wind, like ghosts with teeth and claws, and summer insects whispered in the dark corners, as if they were weaving one conspiracy after another. Sam. From the shocking scene in the banquet hall to now, Natalie has been holding Samwell's hand tightly, refusing to let go. Master Jon, will you be all right? Samwell patted the little girl's hand and comforted him. Don't worry. There are 3 silver links on Maester Gilmore's necklace. With his medical knowledge, he will surely heal Lord John. Having said that, in fact, Samwell knew very well that Jon Arryn might not be able to save him. Petter, Littlefinger, Baelish will not give the old Duke a chance to live. Yes, from the moment Jon Arryn vomited blood and fell to the ground, Samwell had already identified Petter as the real culprit behind this conspiracy, instead of Prince Oberyn, who was the most suspected in everyone's eyes. In the original novel, Petter Baelish, Littlefinger, instigated his secret lover, the Duchess, Lisa Tully, to poison and assassinate her husband. However, that happened almost a year later, when Duke John found the real evidence of Queen Cersei Lannister's derailment from the book, The Genealogy and History of the Major Nobles of the Seven Kingdoms. Littlefinger, I just moved my hand, and took advantage of the situation to plant the crime on the Lannister family, thus detonating the conflict between the western border and the northern border, and disrupting the situation in the Seven Kingdoms. The current situation, except that the time is advanced, the situation is so similar. It's just the one who is responsible, from the Lannister family to the Martell family. In fact, even without Prince Oberyn's show, he would be the #1 suspect. After all, he is the Red Viper, with a bad reputation, and he happens to have an old grudge with Duke John, so he is simply an excellent scapegoat. Now, he himself was playing tricks to negotiate for the sake of negotiating, coupled with Mrs. Lisa's angry accusation at Prince Oberyn at the banquet. It directly made everyone believe that he was the murderer. Prince Oberyn couldn't get rid of this pot. It is estimated that only Samwell knows his innocence. But Samwell couldn't help him, because there is no evidence. And, Littlefinger, is so well hidden that no one will suspect him at all. Since he came to Yingzui Islet in the name of the Minister of Finance to explore silver mines, he probably has already started casting the stage for the ending of today's scene. The first character on stage is of course Samwell. In order to hide his true purpose, Petter also deliberately used coins to fake accounts to cover it up. Although Samwell knew the true face of this person, he had already guessed that Petter had bad intentions, and also guessed that he was trying to stir up disputes between Riverbend and Dorne. But even so, Samwell still couldn't get rid of this conspirator. Calculation and control, step by step, into the center of the stage he set up. There are also Yorick Shad, Arianne Martell, Randall Tarley, Alicent Florent. These people are not the same. When the stage is set up, it's the turn of the real protagonist, Jon Arryn. And the final, big villain, Oberyn Martell. Of course, Littlefinger is not a god, he cannot control everything precisely. But he doesn't need to be precise. The process of the story may deviate, but the ending is doomed. With Lisa Tully as a pawn, Jon Arryn must die. Petter was just setting the stage for his death. A stage where he can remove his suspicion of murder and maximize the impact of Jon's death. I have to say, he did succeed. Now that Oberyn Martell is the murderer, and with the death of Jon Arryn, the tension between the Reach and Dorne is immediately fueled and exacerbated. Even the stability of the entire Seven Countries may be shaky because of this. Earl Landau came over and interrupted Samwell's thoughts. Father. Earl Randall took a step closer and said in a low voice. In this case, I must be with the army of Hornhill. And your uncle must also go to gather the army of Brightwater City. After we leave, you are here to keep an eye on Oberyn Martell. Don't let, he's out of your sight, you know. Samwell understood that his father was worried that the Martell family would have another move, but he knew that Oberyn had a fart trick, and this, Red Viper, was the most confused one right now. However, Samwell really couldn't explain it to his father, so he could only nod silently. Noticing the departure of Earl Randall and his party, Prince Oberyn couldn't help casting his gaze. Red Viper has been completely disarmed at this moment, its armor has been stripped off, and its spear has been taken away. It is surrounded by more than a dozen bodyguards of the Iron family alone with bare hands. However, he had no fear on his face, and shouted at the top of his voice. Hey, people from the River Bend, you don't need to mobilize the army. I really came to Starfall City alone with a single spear. At most, there was a foolish attendant. I left him in the tavern. Also, Duke John coughed suddenly. I am also very sorry for the blood, but this matter really has no honor for me. I dare to swear in the name of the Liang, the Long Halberd, and the Seven Gods. Shut up, the Red Viper, a knight of the Arryn family said angrily. You'd better pray to the 7 gods that the Duke is safe, otherwise, we will definitely let you be buried with him. Then you won't be able to catch the real culprit who poisoned Duke John. The real culprit is not you. I said, I didn't. Uncle. Princess Ariane couldn't help but persuade, stop talking. Prince Oberon couldn't believe it. Even you think it's me? No. Princess Ariane shook her head, but her tone was not so firm. I just think we should wait for news from the bachelor first. Maybe the Duke is just coughing up blood because he is too tired from traveling all the way. Lord John has never coughed up blood before. The Knight of the Arryn family retorted, there is nothing wrong with his body. Prince Oberon reminded, but he is over 70 years old after all. Uncle. Princess Ariane really wanted to seal her uncle's mouth at this moment. Prince Oberon sighed helplessly, and had no choice but to shut up. He didn't expect that the performance that he deliberately put on in order to appear tougher at the negotiating table turned out to be like this. Gods, he couldn't help thinking to himself, do you really like to tease the world so much? I don't know if they heard Prince Oberon's defamation, but the gods finally gave their verdict. The closed door opened, and Maester Gilmore walked out with a heavy face. How is the Duke? Facing the tense gazes, Maester Gilmore sighed and shook his head. The time the gods are willing to leave for the Duke is running out. What? There was an uproar at the scene. Bachelor Gilmore had no choice but to try his best to calm everyone down, saying, my lords, please enter the house, the Duke still has something to explain. Okay. The River Bend nobles entered the house one after another. Princess Ariane also walked in after asking the guards for permission. And just as Prince Oberon was about to step forward, he was stopped by the Knights of the River. Bachelor Gilmore said, the Duke specifically said that Prince Oberon should also come in. Hearing the bachelor's words, all the knights were puzzled. But they didn't dare to go against the Duke's wishes, so they had to get out of the way. It seems that his mind is still clear. Prince Oberon muttered in a low voice. Seeing that the Knights of the Arryn family were about to go mad again, he quickly shut his mouth and strode into the room. Chapter 109 As High as Glory. Walking into the room, Samwell only felt a gust of hot air rushing towards his face. This place is already hot in Dorne, but now, the servants even lit the fireplace. But even so, the blazing heat couldn't warm Duke John. His face was pale, his lips were purple, and he was covered with a thick quilt, but he was still shaking. Your Excellency, what else do you want to explain? Margaret came to the bed with a sad face, and leaned over to ask. But Duke John didn't look at her, but stared at the door until he saw Prince Oberon, and then said hoarsely, Oberon. Hearing this name, the weeping Lady Lisa by the bed jumped up like an electric shock and shouted, get out. Who let you in? You murderer. Get out, get out. Seeing that the scene was about to become chaotic again, Samwell shouted. Quiet. Lady Lisa stared at the young baron with wide eyes, as if she couldn't believe that he was yelling at herself. Without waiting for her to speak again, Samwell hurriedly said, everyone, please be quiet, the Duke is talking. Sure enough, after everyone quieted down, they heard Duke John's voice. Madam is tired, take her down, rest. John, what are you talking about? Lisa cried and threw herself on the bed, I'm not going anywhere, I want to be with you all the time. Duke John seemed to be saying something again, but it was all drowned out by his wife's sharp cries. Samwell spoke again, and said to the Knights of the Arryn family. You have all heard the order from the Duke, why are you still in a daze? Lady Lisa is too sad, let her go down and rest first. The knights looked at each other, and finally stepped forward to carry Madame Lisa away. Mother, let go of my mother. The Duke's son started crying again. So Samwell spoke again and asked the knights to simply take him away. The room finally fell silent. Duke John cast a grateful look at Samwell, then turned to the door. Oberon, come here. Prince Oberon came to the bed under the watchful eyes of the Knights of the Reach, and tried to speak in the most sincere tone. Lord John, please trust me, I will never poison you. I trust you. Prince Oberon was overjoyed when he heard the words. He was almost desperate, but he didn't expect the Duke to say such words. Duke John stared into Prince Oberon's eyes, and said intermittently, back then, I owed you fairness, now, I will pay you back, but I hope you can also give me what I want, peace. Prince Oberon understood what Duke John meant, and his expression changed for a while. He suddenly remembered that when he was greeted on the pier before, he had ridiculed Duke John for only making others the price of peace. At that time, Duke John responded that he could also sacrifice for peace. Prince Oberon didn't believe it at all, until now. Although he knew that he hadn't poisoned him at all, did Duke John really know? Even his own niece couldn't believe his innocence, let alone anyone else. But Duke John chose to pardon him, just to prevent the situation in Dornay from collapsing. Prince Oberon was rebellious all his life, and he rarely admired anyone, but now, looking at the hand of the dying king in front of him, he couldn't restrain a surge of respect in his heart. Okay, I promise you. Duke John was obviously relieved, and his eyes searched the crowd again until he saw Natalie shrinking behind Samwell. Nada, the Duke is calling you. Samwell pushed the little girl to the bed. Your Excellency. Natalie dared not approach Prince Oberon. But Prince Oberon said in a deep voice, kneel down. Huh, the little girl was startled. Until Samwell whispered something in her ear, she timidly knelt down in front of Prince Oberon. I, Oberon Martell, brother of Doran Martell, in the name of the Sunspear, acknowledge the inheritance of Natalie Dane, daughter of Ashara Dane, to Starfall. From starting today, you will become a vassal of the Martell family, the Earl of Starfall City. When Natalie heard this, she realized that she had finally been officially recognized by the Martell family and became the Earl of Starfall City. She was still in a dream for a while. Natalie, miss. Hearing Duke John's voice, Natalie quickly turned her head. My lord, what other orders do you have? Please don't block the two guests of Martell family. Leave. Natalie nodded quickly. Okay, my lord, I will not embarrass the two guests of the Martell family. Hearing this, Duke John relaxed, as if his wish had finally come true. Please let my wife and children come in. Everyone retreated quickly, letting Lady Lisa and her son come in to say goodbye to Duke John. Crying and screaming filled the room again. Samwell looked at the old Duke on the bed with a complex expression, with mixed feelings in his heart. He knew that Duke John's actions just now were to quell this dispute, and even to eliminate possible future conflicts. Perhaps the old Duke has realized that he has become a ***** of some conspirators to disrupt the situation, or maybe he doesn't know anything, but only knows that he must do so. Even if it might allow Prince Oberon, the murderer, who killed him, to go free, he must do so. Only in this way can the dispute between Huon and Dornay be calmed down, and greater conflicts will not break out, and even shake the stability of the Seven Kingdoms. Everyone, please be quiet. Margaret's voice came from next to her ear. The Duke seems to be talking about something again. Everyone fell silent again, and finally heard the faint voice of Duke John repeating. As high as glory, as high as glory, as high as honor, as high as honor. This is the clan language of the Iron family. It is also the persistence of the old Duke all his life. Samwell suddenly thought of the other 4 words that Duke John kept repeating before his death. In the original book, Seed Strong and Tough, when he was reading the book, he was actually very puzzled. Duke John clearly had the opportunity to tell the truth before he died, so why didn't he tell King Robert directly that his queen cheated on her and gave birth to 3 children who were not his real heirs? These 4 words are like a riddle. Now he finally understood. Duke John couldn't bear to destroy the glory he had held on to for half his life. If he told the truth directly, with King Robert's fiery personality, he would definitely kill the queen and the 3 evil-born children, and even lead the army to attack the western border. Will the Duke of Tywin in the Western Territory wait to die? One bad thing is that the 7 kingdoms are in chaos, and the people are in dire straits. Therefore, in the original book, Duke John would rather bring this secret to the grave. Even if he died because of this secret, he would not bear to see the collapse of the 7 kingdoms that he painstakingly supported. It is the same now, even if he thinks that Prince Oberon is likely to be the murderer who killed him. He will let him go in exchange for peace. This is Duke John's persistence, and this is his glory. Although in Samwell's view, this peace may not be as Duke John wishes. Now the situation in the 7 kingdoms seems to be calm, but in fact, the undercurrent has long been turbulent. There are exiled members of the Targaryen royal family who are always thinking about taking back the Iron Throne, while there are careerists from all walks of life fanning the flames for fear that the world will not be chaotic. Duke Tywin of the Western Territory is ambitious and wants to return to King's Landing. Prince Dorne thinks about revenge and even restores the Targaryen dynasty all day long. The king's younger brother has also coveted the Iron Throne for a long time. As for the basic board of the Baratheon dynasty, in the alliance of fish, wolf, deer and eagle, Duke Horst Tully, the fish family, is dying of terminal illness, and Duke Eddard Stark, the wolf family, upholds the long-standing separatism of the Northerners. They tend to be chauvinistic, and they don't want to pay attention to the affairs south of the Neck at all. The brothers of the Deer family are not in harmony, and the boss, Robert Baratheon, is a king who doesn't care about things. The core figure who has really maintained this new dynasty, and can even be said to be the pillar supporting the rule of the Iron Throne, is the Eagle of the Valley, Hand of the King, Duke Jon Arryn. If he dies like this, the situation in the Seven Kingdoms will immediately become precarious. Littlefinger, Petyr Baelish's blow really hit the nail on the head. High as glory. Duke Jon was still repeating these words. It's a pity that he regarded glory above all else all his life, but in the end he was assassinated in the most disgraceful way. In the peaceful situation he tried his best to maintain during his lifetime may gradually fall apart with his death. In Game of Thrones, after all, there is no place for glory. As high as glory. Duke Jon uttered a high-pitched voice, and then fell into dead silence. What followed were the cries of Lady Lisa and her youngest son, Robert. All the nobles bowed down to express their condolences with sorrowful faces. Maester Gilmore turned and walked out of the room, and walked quickly to the aviary. Not long after, the ravens flapped their wings and flew into the night sky, scattered in all directions. They will spread the news of the death of Lord Jon Arryn, Hand of the King, throughout the Seven Kingdoms. Black wings, black message. The sea of summer under the moonlight is as smooth as a mirror, reflecting the stars in the night sky. They are like the eyes of the gods, watching the vicissitudes of the world coldly and indifferently. Only they have never changed. Walking out of the hot and sad room, Samwell stood in the gloomy courtyard for a long time, but what he was thinking at this moment was not the ingenious calculation of a certain conspirator, nor the war and fire that was about to sweep across the Seven Kingdoms, but it was the cry of Duke Jon before he died. The proverbs that the old man interpreted all his life overwhelmed all the noises of conspiracies and tricks, resounded through the starry sky, and lingered for a long time. As High as Glory. Chapter 110 Black News. Volume 2 Blood and Fire. Different from the scorching sun in the south, the summer in the north is still cold and howling. Here, it is difficult for delicate flowers to survive, and only the most tenacious vegetation such as sturdy oaks, old iron trees, and hard feather grasses can adapt to this icy and snowy climate. Also unacceptable, there is also the belief in the south. Different from the seven gods who have names and surnames and have kind faces, people in the northern region believe in those ancient gods who have neither name nor appearance. The earliest aborigines in this continent, the ancient beliefs of the children of the forest. Therefore, it is also called Old God. The old gods had no preaching priests, no pious prayers, no carols of praise, and even no unified worship ceremony. Some of them were just weirwood trees carved with human faces. Northern people believe that the weirwood is the incarnation of the gods. They can look at the world through the faces on the weirwood, listen to prayers, and shelter believers. It is said that the oldest weirwood tree in the northern region is in the Godswood Forest in Winterfell, and it has experienced tens of thousands of years. Guardian of the North, Duke of Winterfell, Ed Stark was kneeling in front of this weirwood, praying silently. This is the routine homework he has to do every day. The huge canopy almost covered the entire yard. The deep red leaves were like thousands of blood-stained palms. A melancholy and deep face was carved on the trunk, full of vigilance and weird smell. Its eyes shed red tears, the sap of the weirwood, as if lamenting the misery of the world and the impermanence of fate. The sound of footsteps behind him startled Duke Eddard, and he turned around to find his wife, Catelyn Tully, walking. "What's the matter, Catelyn?" He noticed that his wife looked very bad. Catelyn stepped on the thick humus that had accumulated for thousands of years and came to her husband, and took out a letter. "Ed, the raven has brought bad news. Black wings, bring black news." Duke Eddie sighed in a low voice, and at the same time took the Letter from his wife and opened it. Caitlin held her husband's hand, and soon, she felt his grief. She knew that her husband had been an adopted son in the Eyrie when he was young, and that the then childless Lord John Arryn treated him and another adopted son, Robert Baratheon, as if they were his own sons. When the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen II, asked Duke John to hand over his two adopted sons, the Duke of Eyrie City, who valued glory above all else, would rather rebel than betray the people he swore to protect. Biological father and son, maybe that's all. How could it be? Duke Eddard held the letter firmly. John, how did he die suddenly? Caitlin hesitated for a while, and finally took out another letter. This is a letter from my sister Lisa, she said. Prince Oberyn poisoned her husband to death. Duke Ed took the letter in a hurry, and after a quick scan, his body trembled even more. Caitlin couldn't help reminding Ed, Lisa has been hit too hard, and her spirit is not stable, so what she's telling may not be the truth. Duke Ed stood up suddenly, and suddenly pulled out the giant sword, Ice, in his hand. This two-handed giant sword made of Valyrian steel has been passed down by the Stark family for more than 400 years, but it is still as sharp as ever. The name of the sword. At that time, Stark was still king in the north. I want to find out the truth. Duke Ed's voice was as cold as iron, holding the giant sword tightly. Caitlin opened her mouth, but said nothing after all. Duke Ed stared straight at the weeping eyes on the weirwood, remained silent for a long time, and finally asked a question full of sadness and resentment. The gods are not fair. Damn the gods. In the meeting hall of King's Landing Red Castle, angry roars echoed. And you, all damned. King Robert Baratheon, who has not attended the imperial meeting for many years, unexpectedly appeared in front of all the cabinet ministers today. However, the attitude is extremely bad. I can die. Robert slammed the table and roared, but how can Jon Arryn die? How can he just die? Like this. The stomach of the ruler of the Seven Kingdoms was as big as his voice, and a thick black beard as thick as wire covered his fat double chin. Thick dark circles and sagging skin were signs of excessive wine. You know, just 15 years ago, the king was a handsome knight who roamed the battlefield. When he was wearing armor, wearing a huge helmet with antlers, and holding a hammer with iron spikes, he was a veritable invincible of war. Although he no longer has the size and bravery of the past, his momentum is still there. Under the roar, all the cabinet ministers were silent. Varys, Your Majesty, Intelligence Chief, Octospider, Valaz's fat body trembled, and he responded hastily. Tell me, did the Red Viper kill Jon? Your Majesty, Varys said with a bitter face, I don't know about this. Crap, don't you know everything? Crap, it's all crap. Robert growled again, spraying all the spittle on Varys' face, but he didn't dare to wipe it. After cursing, Robert panted heavily, and it took him a while to regain his composure, and ordered, let the Red Viper come to King's Landing immediately, and I will personally preside over his trial. Yes, Your Majesty, and the nobles who were present at that time, let them all come to testify. Yes. Afterwards, the chamber fell into silence again, only the sound of Robert's heavy breathing was heard. Duke Stannis Baratheon of Dragonstone finally broke the silence. Your Majesty, the top priority should be to appoint a new king. Robert's eyes slowly swept across everyone's faces. What do you think? After another brief silence, Pycelle, who was in college, took the lead in saying, Your Majesty, I think Duke Tywin Lannister is the most competent. After all, he has been the hand of the king for 20 years and has a wealth of experience. What experience? Robert interrupted coldly. The experience of making a mad king. Pycelle defended in a low voice. Your Majesty, you cannot blame Lord Tywin for the fault of King Aerys II. Under Robert's icy gaze, Pycelle's voice became smaller and smaller, and finally he lowered his head, not daring to speak any more. Just as the atmosphere in the chamber was stagnant again, a crisp voice suddenly sounded at the door. Your Majesty, why can't my father be the hand of the king? When everyone turned their heads, they saw Queen Cersei walking in slowly. She has golden curly hair and emerald green eyes typical of the Lannister family. Although she has given birth to 3 children, she is still slender and graceful. The Light of the West woman has just turned 30, and she is the most attractive age in her life. The gods also love her very much, and there are not many traces of time left on that beautiful face. But even so, she still couldn't get her husband's favor. Woman, Robert snapped angrily, as the Imperial Council the place you should be. Your Majesty, I just happened to pass by and heard you discussing. Then keep passing by, Your Majesty. Damn it, didn't you understand a word I just said? Robert's voice rose again. Get out. Cersei's body trembled slightly, her eyes stayed on her husband's face for a moment, and finally, she lifted her skirt and self-esteem, and strode away. Go on, said Robert. Several ministers exchanged glances, and finally Peter Baelish, Minister of Finance, Littlefinger, said, Your Majesty, the hand of the king manages the country on behalf of the king, so it should be the person you trust the most. This seemed like nonsense, but Robert was lost in thought. After a while, the king got up and ordered, Get ready, I'm going to Winterfell. Chapter 111 Letter. Nar just ate a few wild fruits, but he still felt uncomfortable in his stomach. He leaned against the crimson rock, just wanting to close his eyes and sleep. Get up, you lazybones. The team is about to start. Aren't you going to rest at noon today? Nar got up reluctantly. Why don't you rest? We will soon arrive at Yingzui Island. I heard that as soon as we get there, the benevolent Lord Caesar will entertain us warmly. There will be bread, barbecue, mushroom soup, everything. Nar was almost drooling when he heard it, and quickly walked a few steps to keep up with the team. As a refugee from Highland City, Nar hadn't had enough meals since he was a child. Therefore, after hearing the news that Yingzui Island was recruiting refugees, he joined a migration team of refugees and set off. Although Yingzui Island is deep in the Crimson Mountains, and Caesar, a surname that has never been heard, has little appeal, but for these refugees, the temptation to eat is extremely hard to resist. What's more, the glorious achievements of the Baron Yingzui Island have been reported one after another recently, which also gave the refugees more confidence. Especially for a boy like Nar who loves to dream at the age of 17 or 18, these stories are never tired of hearing. No, the boy approached the team leader again and asked, Does that Lord Caesar really know fire magic? Does it matter? The Dane family sent 20,000 troops to attack Yingzui Island that day, and they were all burned to death by Lord Caesar. Then the Dornish people were unwilling to reconcile and gathered another 100,000 troops. In the end, Lord Caesar waved his hand and burned them all. Nar was fascinated when he heard it, his eyes sparkled. At this time, another young refugee came over. I heard that Lord Caesar has a flaming sword, which can burn all enemies to death. No, I heard it was a flaming hammer. What warhammer? It's obviously a sword. Ellipsis. Stop arguing. The team leader raised his voice. What do you know? Lord Caesar is the prince in the prophecy, and of course he is holding the burning sword. What is the prince in the prophecy? It is the reincarnation of the ancient hero Azor Ahai. Back then, this hero held the burning sword, Lightbringer, and led the world to repel the demons from darkness and extreme cold. Before the leader's story was finished, the team had already arrived outside the valley of Yingzui Island. The guards patrolling outside were not surprised when they saw the refugee team, and seemed to have gotten used to it. He just briefly emphasized the rules in the territory to the refugees, and then led them into the valley. Crossing the heavily guarded Taniguchi, Nar only felt that his eyes suddenly opened up. The neat wooden houses, the busy crowd, and the towering castle, even though it was not yet completed, all made Nar bend down unconsciously, and even his footsteps became much lighter. Going forward, Nar saw an army with bright armor. Hundreds of capable soldiers lined up neatly, holding scimitars, spears, and round shields, training. And in front of the soldiers, stood a tall and handsome young man. The one in front is Lord Caesar. You all pay attention later and don't talk nonsense. The words of the guard leading the way made Nar's heart tremble, and he quickly lowered his head, not daring to look at the legendary prince who could use fire magic. My lord, this is a new batch of refugees. From Highland City, there are 137 people. Okay. Samwell nodded, came to the refugees, and glanced slowly. Then, he said loudly, Since you have come to Yingzui Island on your own initiative, as the lords here, I am willing to accept you as my subjects. From now on, I will give you food, clothes and shelter. In return, you must work for me, even fight for me. Thank you, Lord. We would fight for you. Thank you Caesar for giving us food. Ellipsis. The refugees shouted in disorder, and some even knelt down and kowtowed to Samuel. Samuel calmed down again, and then called the housekeeper, Gavin, and asked him to settle the refugees and assign them jobs. After doing all this, Samuel wanted to continue training recruits, but found a large ship slowly docking at the pier. Looking at the long sword falling star flag fluttering on the ship, Samuel smiled and shook his head, with a helpless expression, but still walked over. When he arrived at the pier, he just saw Natalie Dane in a purple dress and a wide sun hat walking off the boat. Miss Natalie, you take Yingzui Island as your home, why do you come here every now and then? Facing Samuel's ridicule, Natalie pouted, but still walked quickly to the man, angrily said, Master Caesar, as a neighbor, I can't even come to visit. And you said that we need to strengthen personnel exchanges between the two places to avoid conflicts again. Okay, you are right. Samuel shrugged, and stretched out his right hand for Natalie to hold. The two walked a few steps, and Natalie asked again, Is my mother there? Your mother just came 3 days ago, and you weren't there at that time. Oh, I was just asking. What if she comes back so soon? Samuel was a little speechless. Wow, Sam, there are so many more people in your territory. Natalie exclaimed in surprise, looking at the busy scene in front of her. That's because my reputation has spread. Samuel raised the corner of his mouth proudly. Natalie nodded, seeming to recognize the man's reputation, but then she frowned and asked. But Sam, these Riverbend people are the subjects of other lords, right? Will there be no problem if you accept them like this? There is indeed a problem. Although the Duke of Mace had already signed an order, agreeing to Samuel to gather the refugees of Highgarden, but that was only limited to Highgarden, but he did not say that the refugees of the entire Reach were under his control. What's the problem? Samuel said in a relaxed tone, these people came to my territory by themselves, and they didn't have a coat of arms engraved on their buttocks. How would I know who they belong to? I thought it was and where are the savages here? Natalie chuckled and said, beware of other lords coming to your door. Let them come, Samuel said disdainfully, as long as there are people here who are willing to go with their lord, I will never stop them. What Samuel said was quite confident, because he really treated these refugees very well, taking care of food and housing, as well as work points. As long as these people are not stupid, they will definitely not want to go back to their original territory to beg and wander. As for the so-called jurisdiction dispute, Samuel pretended not to know anything anyway. He only knew that these people came from the mountains. What, you say they are your subjects? Then you call them and see if they agree. While speaking, I saw Bachelor Kevin walking over quickly. My lord, there is a letter from King's Landing. Samuel took the letter, glanced at it, and said with a smile. Our Majesty is really planning to judge the Red Viper. Huh, Natalie wondered, but Duke John himself admitted Prince Oberon's innocence. Samuel shook his head and said, Duke John is willing to forgive the Red Viper, but it doesn't mean that His Majesty is willing to. Well, I should prepare to go to King's Landing, and His Majesty wants me to testify in court. Can I go? Natalie asked quickly. Is it possible? You have to go. Starfall City should have received the letter, and you are also one of the witnesses. Oh, then I'll be with you. Natalie smiled brightly. Chapter 112 Arrangements. Yingzui Island. Lord's Cabin. A group of retainers of Baron Caesar were sitting around a round table. Since the Lord has not arrived yet, everyone is chatting casually. A young maid swiftly brought scented tea to everyone. Her face was a little red, because everyone's eyes were always looking at her intentionally or unintentionally. This made her very uncomfortable and confused. Because her beauty is not outstanding, and she is only from a refugee in the River Bay, she does not deserve such attention from the gentlemen in these territories. What she didn't know was that the reason why these retainers paid attention to her was entirely because Lord Caesar's last maid had become the Earl of Starfall City. This is even more exaggerated than a fairy tale, and everyone still can't believe it. So it is inevitable that I paid more attention to the current maid, and even secretly guessed that this could not be another bloodline lost by some family. The door opened and Samuel walked in. All the retainers stood up and saluted. Sit down. Samuel sat down at the main seat, and then motioned for the maid to step down. This time you are called to a meeting because I will leave for King's Landing in 3 days to Participate in the trial about the death of Duke John. Samwell took a sip of tea, and waited for everyone to digest the news before continuing. During my absence, Gavin is still in charge of the daily affairs of Yingzui Island. Yes, my lord. Gavin quickly stood up and saluted. The dock laborer now has the aura of a big butler, and he is able to manage the territory with ease. He will not behave as flustered and at a loss as when Samwell left the territory for the first time. Samwell also nodded to Gavin, then turned to the craftsman leader Vito and said, Mr. Vito, you are still responsible for the construction of the castle. I hope that when I come back from King's Landing, I can officially live in it. Yes, my lord, if everything goes well, the castle will be completed in 1.5 months. Very good. Samwell turned to Busso, the leader of the blacksmith. Mr. Busso, you will continue to be in charge of the silver deer casting. Yes, my lord. Due to the secret agreement with Littlefinger, Petter Baelish, the casting of silver deer must be entrusted to a truly trusted person. And Busso already has this qualification now, because his son is serving in Samwell's personal guards, and he also married a wild woman as his wife. Samwell then explained their tasks to the others one by one, and finally looked at Cheeman, and said in a deep voice, Kemen, I will give you 100 elite soldiers, and allow you to gather 500 savages. Yourself. The corresponding food and weapons will be provided by Yingzeu. I only want you to do one thing, that is to continuously expand the scope of control of the territory outward. When you meet any tribe of savages, you can ask them to surrender in my name. If they don't obey, then use your sword to make them surrender. Do you understand? Quote. Kemen showed a bloodthirsty smile. I understand, Lord Caesar. As soon as these words came out, the temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Everyone seemed to be able to foresee that a ***** storm would soon engulf the Crimson Mountains. Actually, Samwell had hesitated before whether to release the mad dog Cheeman, but after careful consideration, he still made up his mind. After all, John Arryn died a year earlier than the original time, and the chaos of the Seven Kingdoms will also start early because of this. Originally, there wasn't much time left for him to farm and develop, but now that Petter Baelish Littlefinger did it, the time was even tighter. So, at this time, he can't help looking forward and backward. Even if Cheeman, a mad dog, is at risk of running free, he must develop his power and increase his population as soon as possible. Fortunately, his wings are growing and his prestige has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. He is unshakable in Yingzui Island. No matter how ambitious Cheeman is, he dare not easily jump out to resist him. Remember, try not to kill if you can. Samwell couldn't help reminding, even if you want to kill, you must kill the leader of the tribe and the leader of the rebel army. The rest of the savages gathered in Yingzui Island, let they work for me, understand? I understand what you mean. Cheeman nodded and said, actually, I don't have the heart to kill. Fellow savages. These words made all the retainers present look a little weird. It seems to see a female branch girl saying that she loves every client deeply. The corner of Samwell's mouth twitched, and he wanted to arrange a deputy for Cheeman, but after thinking about it, he finally gave up. Since you have decided to use the sharpest knife, why put another layer of film on it? If Cheeman really went too far, Samwell can also take back his power at any time. Anyway, the core of the opponent's army is their own people, and the logistics support depends entirely on Yingzui Island, so there is no need to worry about Kemen's tail. After arranging all the matters, Samwell ended the meeting. After everyone left, he fell into deep thought alone in the hut. Going to King's Landing this time, even though he was just a witness for Duke John's death. Samwell always felt that this trip might not be easy. After all, it is the center of power of the Seven Kingdoms, and it is also a gathering place for conspirators, a place full of lies, crime and blood. This made him unable to help but want to improve his strength to deal with possible accidents. But at present, his strength attribute has reached a bottleneck, and there is no way to improve it qualitatively without a large number of golden dragons or silver stags. As for the agility attribute, he has not yet found a way to improve it quickly. It is the spiritual attribute. Samwell has always had an idea. At present, his spiritual attribute has reached 2.19, which is all due to the ghost grass, but with a large amount of intake, its effectiveness has become weaker and weaker. Today, he needs to eat 50 ghost grass to increase his mental attribute by 0.01. So, he must look for a new, spiritual food. Before, he suspected that the spiritual attribute was related to the belief of the old gods, so he had the idea of eating weirwood. But the weirwood is after all a sacred object in the hearts of the believers of the old gods. He was worried about causing bad influence, so he kept procrastinating. Now, he decided to give it a try. Samuel came to the bedroom, lay down on the bed, rolled up the whites of his eyes, opened his eyes again, and leaned over the falcon, soaring in the sky. Following the direction in memory, Samuel quickly skimmed across the sea, and then plunged into the forest. It wasn't long before he found the weirwood he had seen in his first eagle dream. It has not changed from the last time I saw it. The huge and lush branches and leaves are like a huge hat, covering the entire mountain forest. The human face carved on the trunk is lifelike, as if it is really watching everything in front of it. The Samuel controller falcon fell from the top of the tree, and then rose again into the air, but there was already an extra branch in the eagle's talons. However, when he turned around and flew away from the weirwood, he always felt that there was a vague gaze watching him from behind. Samuel resisted the urge to look back, ascended into the sky and disappeared. When Falcon returned to Yingzui Island and placed the weirwood branch on the table, Samuel also got up from the bed. He took the branch and put it in his mouth. The blood-red juice oozed out, making Samuel's mouth a little more terrifying. The taste of the branches is very bad, bitter and astringent, with a weird fishy smell. Not to mention it was hard to chew, and it hurt his throat when he swallowed it. But even so, Samuel's spiritual attributes did not increase. He thought it was because he didn't eat enough, so he took a few more bites. But still no change. Weirwood doesn't work. Samuel fell into doubt. Could it be that I guessed wrong? Isn't it related to the belief in the old gods? Chapter 113 Blood Orange. Sunspear City is always sunny. Today is an exception. The dark clouds covered the sun, and the salty sea breeze couldn't blow away the heat in the air, making it almost suffocating. Princess Ariane hid in the cool spring water, holding red wine in one hand and a tale of 10,000 ships of voyage in the other. However, her eyes were out of focus, obviously her attention was not on the book. The sound of light footsteps awakened the princess from her contemplation. She turned her head and saw a blonde girl walking towards her. Trinae. Princess Ariane stood up from the water in surprise, and opened her arms enthusiastically to those who came. Trinae Sand is one of the many illegitimate daughters of Prince Abaron, the Red Viper, and the one closest to Princess Ariane. She has a sweet appearance, like a summer strawberry, because her mother is a nun, so she has a purity that does not belong to the world, but in fact, anyone who is familiar with Tyene knows that her innocence and sweetness it's all a disguise, and what's hidden inside is actually a dangerous and rebellious girl. Moreover, Tyene's attainments in poisons are not inferior to her father in the slightest. Your Royal Highness. Tyene smiled and saluted, then hugged the naked and wet princess. The princess kissed her best childhood playmate and rubbed her delicate face. Where have you been? Why did you come to see me now? I went to sea before, and I only found out about you when I came back. Well, I will tell you about this later. Get dressed now, His Royal Highness wants to see you. My father, humph, is he finally willing to see me? I thought he had forgotten that he had me as a daughter. Princess Ariane was reluctantly pulled out of the pool by Tyene. After drying her body, she deliberately picked out the most revealing silk dress, but was snatched away by Tyene when she was about to put it on. Your Highness, you can no longer be so self-willed. You must know that being well-behaved is the best armor for us women. Speaking, Tyene chose a simple ivory-colored cloth robe to put on the princess, and deliberately did not give her any fancy jewelry. She only took a 7-pointed star pendant that symbolized the belief of the 7 gods and hung it on the princess's chest. So I must crawl at my father's feet and beg his forgiveness. Princess Ariane muttered a few words, but still accepted her cousin's arrangement. After tidying up, Princess Ariane came to the garden of flowing water. The flowers and plants in the garden are fragrant, but she has no heart to appreciate them. Following the guards to a pavilion, Princess Ariane discovered that her uncle, Prince Abaron, was also standing outside the pavilion looking at the blood orange tree in the garden in a daze. Princess remembers that when she was young, her favorite game with her cousins was to smash oranges off the tree with a meteor hammer. But I don't know when, my father no longer allowed them to enter the flowing water garden. Casually, he monopolized this place and turned it into his own castle, or in other words, a cage. Princess Ariane withdrew her thoughts, and saw her father, Prince Doran, sitting in the pavilion, staring at a vast chessboard in front of her, lost in thought. Pale and swollen, the ruler of Dornay, with his legs almost paralyzed by severe gout resting on a padded footstool, played with his red and swollen hands a chess piece carved from onyx. Couldn't stop trembling slightly. Princess Ariane looked at her father who was tormented by illness, and suddenly felt a little sad. And the resentment and dissatisfaction in her heart also eased a lot. Father. Prince Doran came back to his senses and looked at his daughter fixedly. Prince Oberon also came over at this time, stood beside his niece, and said, "We messed up this time. But brother, don't worry, I will find a way to make up for everything. It's none of your business." Princess Ariane said, "It's my willful behavior that caused Dornay such a big loss." Prince Doran spoke, his voice was weak, like a piece of fragile parchment. "Tell me, Ariane, why start a war?" Hearing this, the anger that had been suppressed with great difficulty suddenly surged into her heart. Princess Ariane looked directly into her father's eyes and said loudly, "For the glory." Prince Doran chuckled. "Do you know what glory is? The people of the River Bend are fighting on the land of Dornay. Isn't it an honor for me to lead an army to fight back? For your glory, thousands of Dornay warriors sacrificed their lives. Starfall City and High Hidden City will no longer obey our orders, and your uncle fell into the trap because of this, and has poisoned the king's hand on his back. Suspicion. Tell me, Ariane, is this really the glory you want?" Princess Ariane muttered for a while, but she was still unconvinced and said, "That's because we lost the battle of Starfall City. If we win, even if you win that battle, you can't win anything." Prince Doran interrupted coldly, "In the Game of Thrones, the first to be out is always the idiot who can't control his ambition and bet first. You know I don't know, because of your impulsiveness, we have become a wounded prey, and the blood flowing from the wound will surely attract countless greedy vultures, who will take this opportunity to tear us apart and share the food." Princess Ariane wanted to refute, but Prince Oberon spoke first. "Don't worry, brother, I won't let the vultures succeed. This time I go to King's Landing, I will do everything possible to remove the suspicion and never let the war flare up again." Speaking of this, Prince Oberon couldn't help but think of the old man's murmur before he died. So he added, "At any cost." Prince Doran sighed, rubbed the center of his eyebrows tiredly, and said after a while, "Oberon, remember our longing." "Of course I remember." Prince Oberon paused. "We want to avenge Ilya who died tragically in King's Landing that year." Ilya, Prince Doran murmured, with a painful expression on his face, "for so many years, I can see her bleeding face almost every day before going to bed, and I can hear her when I wake up countless times in the middle of the night. And the whining of her children. Oberon, my brother, I really don't want another face of yours. Don't worry, brother." Prince Oberon pretended to be relaxed. "There were countless people who wanted to take my life, but they were the ones who went to meet the stranger in the end. It's different. Brother, your halberd and poison may not be able to help you this time. I don't just rely on these two things, brother, please trust your brother." Prince Doran and his younger brother looked at each other for a long time, and finally looked away, holding the chess piece that symbolized the dragon tightly in his hand, so hard that he kept trembling. "Oberon, you know, I've been planning for so long, and I'm about to succeed." "Really? That girl has already had her period." Princess Ariane was confused and couldn't help asking, "Father, what are you planning?" "Sorry, Ariane, I can't tell you yet." Prince Doran sighed and shook his head, "because I know you too well. The secret is just a wonderful story to you, and you can whisper it to Tyene when you sleep at night. And Triene never hides Obara, and Obara is an alcoholic, who will she tell when she drinks too much? I can't take risks, and the Martell family can't afford to take risks." Princess Ariane's mouth moved, but she didn't speak any more after all. "Brother, please trust me this time. Prince Oberon looked into his brother's eyes with piercing eyes. I will remove the suspicion. I will never delay our plan. Elia's revenge will definitely be avenged. Prince Doran struggled for a while, and finally heaved a long sigh. Okay. Afterwards, he turned to his daughter again, with both helplessness and disappointment in his eyes. Ariane, this time I go to King's Landing, everything will be subject to your uncle's arrangement, and you must no longer make up your own mind. Princess Ariane met her father's gaze, wondering if she remembered her cousin's advice when she came here. She finally lowered her head and said obediently, "Yes, father." Prince Doran waved his hand wearily, indicating that the two can leave. The garden became quiet again. The sky became more and more gloomy, and the wind became stronger and stronger. Finally, the long-standing dullness was finally broken, and the heavy rain also fell down. Your Highness, come in quickly." The servant's shout came from the ear, but Prince Doran ignored it. He just stared blankly at the messy garden in front of him, and remained silent for a long time. Under the ravages of the violent wind and rain, countless blood oranges that were about to ripen, before they had time to pick them, all fell to the ground and smashed to pieces. Chapter 114 Hitchhiking. 5 ships flying the flag of purple grape slowly sailed into the pier of Yingzui Island. Samuel looked at Natalie Dane, who was jumping down from the boat, and was wondering how she came here on the boat from Arbor Island, when he heard the little girl waving at him from afar and shouting, "Come on, Sam, 2 gentlemen from the Arbor offer us a lift to King's Landing." Samuel saw the 2 brothers Horace and Hope standing at the bow of the boat, so he waved his hands happily to thank them. However, what he didn't know was that Huobo at the bow was gritting his teeth and said to his brother, "Miss Natalie insists on bringing this guy Sam, it, do you think I should arrange for him to go to the back boat?" Horace looked at the Countess, who was affectionately holding Samuel's arm, and nodded. "Seriously, yes, otherwise you probably wouldn't have had any chance." The reason why the 2 brothers from Qingting Island took the initiative to come to Starfall City to invite Natalie to accompany them is actually because of the order of their father, Earl Paxter. The purpose is obvious. It is to let Hooper and the Countess get along well. If it can collide with the spark of love, that would be the best. Facing the young and beautiful Countess with a generous dowry, Hopper naturally readily agreed. Slapped his chest loudly in front of his father and said that he would definitely conquer Miss Natalie with his charm. To be honest, if Horace hadn't been the eldest son who would inherit the Arbor Island in the future, he wouldn't be able to help but compete with his younger brother at this moment. However, looking at the 2 people below with an intimate attitude, Horace suddenly gloated a little. "Brother, you have a strong competitor this time." Of course, Hopper was also aware of the crisis, and hurriedly got off the gangway to meet Samuel and Natalie. "Sir Hopper, thank you so much this time." "Haha, you're welcome. It just happened to be on the way." Hopper tried hard to maintain a smile on his face, but stopped Samuel when he was about to board the ship, and said, "I'm really sorry. Sam, this purple grape, it's full. Why don't you go to the dedication ship behind?" "Okay." Samuel nodded cheerfully. Happy in his heart, Huobo hurriedly stretched out his hand to Natalie. "Miss Natalie, please." Unexpectedly, Natalie shook her head. "In this case, then I will also go to the next ship." Hopper's smile suddenly froze on his face. Ellipsis. In the end, both Samuel and Natalie boarded the flagship Purple Grape. It is said that the 2 Redwin brothers suddenly discovered that there were extra rooms. After this farce, Samuel naturally knew the plans of the 2 brothers. No wonder the 2 brothers came here to pick her up. They planned to pick up girls. Of course, it is impossible for him to let Hopper marry Natalie, otherwise the Starfall City that he has worked so hard to obtain will be controlled by the Redwin family. What's more, the little girl is not yet an adult. You beasts. So after boarding the boat, he stayed by Natalie's side all the time, never giving Hopper a chance. It happened that Natalie also liked to pester Samuel. The 2 talked and laughed, and were very intimate, like a couple on a trip, making Hopper like an 800-watt light bulb. "I can't take it anymore. Damn Samuel, I'm going to kill him." In the small cabin room, Hopper turned around in anger. Horace had a disdainful smile on his lips. "Hopper, haven't you always boasted that you are very popular with ladies? Why, you can't even compete with Samuel. He cheated." Huobo roared angrily. That brat discovered that wild woman, and I'm afraid she'd already had asterisk 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 with her. How can I compete with him now? It's not fair at all. Horace shrugged. In this case, then you should give up. If you go back, you will be scolded by your father. No, I won't give up. Don't give up. Horace looked at his brother with red eyes and frowned. Hopper, don't do stupid things. Seeing his younger brother bowed his head and remained silent, Horace realized something, immediately got anxious, got up and said, Hopper, you can think clearly. That man is now the Baron of Yingzui Island. If something happens to him on our ship, High Court will not let us go. Yes. Hornhill and Liangshui City will not let it go. Father will not be able to save you then. I heard that there are pirates on the Stone Step Islands. Hooper said quietly. This is a reasonable reason for him to disappear. Bullshit reasonable reason. Do you think everyone else is stupid? Huobo, don't implicate me if you go crazy. I still want to inherit Qingting Island safely. I see, brother. Hopper nodded, and seemed to have regained his composure. I won't do stupid things. That's right. Horace hugged his younger brother's shoulders and comforted him. It's just a woman. When you arrive in King's Landing, there will be a lot of ladies of noble birth waiting for you to choose. Why bother with this girl who came out of the Red Mountains? The female savages here are competing. Ellipsis. Stone Step Islands. The captain of the Purple Grape was puzzled. Sir Hopper, if you go there, you will deviate from the main route, and I heard that a merchant ship encountered pirates in that area recently. That's why we're going, Hopper said indifferently. It's not the duty of the Qingting Island fleet to fight pirates. But, sir, we only have 5 warships this time. Enough. Hopper waved his hand confidently. The Purple Grape is the main battleship with 300 oars, and the other 4 are all 100-oar warships. What kind of pirates can threaten us? The captain also felt that he was a little too cautious. Since the Iron Islands, the largest gathering place of pirates in Westeros, was brutally suppressed 7 years ago, those Ironmen did not dare to come out to plunder wantonly. Now the waters near the Stepstone Islands, although there were some pirates gathered, I heard that they were all unworthy brats. Okay, sir, I'll turn right now, but the waters around the Stone Step Islands are a bit rough, so you have to be prepared. Ellipsis. Damn it, why are the waves so big all of a sudden? The violent turbulence caused the windbreak lamp in the room to flicker on and off, illuminating Horace's face indistinctly. Under the miserable yellow firelight, the eldest son of Qingting Island staggered up from the bed. It was already late at night. Horace opened the hatch, but he could only see darkness. He called out the name of the attendant loudly, but only got a thunderous response. After the thunder, the pouring rain swept down, and the bean-sized raindrops hit the deck densely, splashing a lot of water. The sea wind is becoming more and more violent. Even if all the sails have been lowered, it still cannot stop the ship from bumping and shaking in the wind and waves. In the face of the majesty of nature, they are extremely fragile. The Stone Step Islands. Why are we going to the Stone Step Islands? Horace found the captain, and finally learned that the fleet had deviated from the main route. Frightened and furious, he immediately thought of his brother. Damn it, it's Hopper. Horace was about to order the fleet to return to the main route, but suddenly there was a bright light in front of him. It turned out that a bolt of lightning flashed across the night sky, almost lighting up the entire sea area as bright as day. Boom! A deafening thunder exploded in Horace's ears, followed by a sputtering sound, as if some huge object fell into the sea. Before Horace came back to his senses, he heard someone yelling in horror. The mast is broken! The mast is broken! Chapter 115 Storm. Boom! In the dark night sky, silver snakes dance wildly, and thunder bursts, as if the gods are venting their anger. The electric light shone on Hopper's face, clearly reflecting the fear and regret in the eyes of the second son of the Earl. How could there be such a big storm? And when he saw the broken mast, he was dumbfounded. Snapped. A loud slap knocked Hopper onto the deck. If you are not my own brother, I will cut off your head right now. Horace's voice came from behind him. Hopper struggled to get up in a dizzy state, and muttered, I didn't expect this to happen. Horace was even more furious when he heard this. He stepped forward and grabbed his younger brother by the collar, and spit wildly in his face. Of course you didn't expect that. You idiot's mind is full of seawater and scorpions. It's just a woman. Why is it necessary to bring everyone into danger? I just heard, there are some pirates in the waters around the Stone Step Islands. Horace really wanted to screw his brother's head off, but after panting for a long time, he finally pushed Hopper to the ground and shouted, "You immediately organize soldiers to be on guard. If there are pirates, you will be the first." Yes. Huobo lowered his head and did not dare to refute, but there was still vicious hatred in his eyes. Horace turned and left, but suddenly found a person standing in the shadow behind him at some point. Boom! A flash of lightning flashed by, and Horace could clearly see the face of the person who came. Samuel Caesar. Horace's heart skipped a few beats, and it took him a long time to force out a smile. "Sam, it's you. You scared me. How long have you been there?" Samuel took a deep look at the two brothers, grinned and said, "I just arrived. What's going on here?" It's okay. Horace pretended to be relaxed. "It's just a small storm. We have seen this kind of thing a lot. You have to trust the skills of the sailors on Chinting Island." "Okay." Samuel nodded. "If you need any help, send someone to call me at any time." "Okay. By the way, there is Miss Natalie, she is okay. I'm going to see her. Please convey the Redwin family's apologies." "I will." Turning around, the smile on Samuel's face was instantly revealed, and an undisguised killing intent flashed in his eyes. Hopper Redwin. Of course, Samuel knew that he must not be reckless. Earl Paxter's second son is not a savage in the mountains, a refugee in the river bend. He cannot be killed casually. He had to learn from the conspirator Petter Baelish, Littlefinger, in this respect, how to kill a man without making himself suspicious. He needs to set up a small stage, find a scapegoat. Dong dong. "Who?" "It's me, Samuel." It took a while for the hatch to be opened, and the pale-faced maid almost fell down just as she was about to salute. Samuel reached out to support her. "Miss Natalie is okay." "Miss, she just vomited and just lay down." Samuel walked into the cabin and saw Natalie lying on the bed with messy hair. "Sam, are you okay?" Samuel sat on the edge of the bed and touched the little girl's forehead. "A little hot. I'm so uncomfortable." The little girl hugged Samuel's arm pitifully, and buried her head in his arms. Such storms are unbearable even for a strong man like Samuel, let alone the delicate Natalie. "It's okay, the storm will pass soon." "Woo, Sam, I don't want to go to King's Landing." "Woohoo, I don't want to go back to Starfall." "Either. I'll go back to Yingzui Island with you." "Okay, woohoo." Okay, go to sleep, everything will be fine when you wake up." Samuel patted Natalie's back, lightly. There were rumbling thunder and violent wind and rain outside the house, interspersed with various indistinct shouts. The dim light in the house flickered non-stop, but it seemed to be the only warmth in the chaotic world. Ellipsis. After finally coaxing Natalie to sleep, Samuel left the room lightly. The storm outside showed no signs of getting better, and even became more violent. The dense raindrops soaked his clothes in an instant, and he felt a little chill when he was blown by the wind. During the violent shaking, Samuel also felt that his stomach was tightly grasped by a big hand, and he needed to do his best to suppress the desire to vomit. In the dark night sky, flashes of lightning flashed from time to time. In the flash of light, Samuel suddenly saw a thrilling scene. On the rough sea, several long boats with triangular sails fluctuated with the huge waves. Sometimes they were thrown into the air by the waves, and splashed high when they fell. Sometimes the whole boat was covered by the huge waves. It took a long time before I got out of the spray wetly. They are like elves jumping on the sea, or more precisely, devils crawling out of hell. Pirates, pirates, there were urgent shouts on the deck. Obviously, Samuel was not the only one who discovered these long ships cruising nearby. Ready to fight, ready to fight. Samuel heard Horace's hoarse voice, but it was quickly covered by rumbling thunder. It. Samuel's face began to turn pale. This was not the battlefield he was used to at all. Amidst the violent wind and rough waves, he could barely stand still. And the personal guards he brought are also not used to the rough seas. Facing the pirates at this time, he can only pray that the soldiers on Chinting Island are strong enough. Although they are well known, there are only 5 warships here, and no one knows how many pirates are on the opposite side. It's even more unclear whether the opponent's brain has gone crazy, or if he really has enough confidence to dare to start a fight in this ghostly weather. Another long bolt of lightning pierced the sky and lasted for 3 to 4 seconds. The entire sea is covered by it, like daytime. With this ray of light, Samuel finally saw everything in front of him clearly. However, he would rather see nothing clearly. In the waves around the fleet, there are as many as 60 or 70 long ships cruising, and they are like bloodthirsty gray wolves, closely following their prey. Among the wolves, there is also a wolf king. It was a single-masted warship, with a dark red hull, slender and low, and its sails were as black as a starless night sky. Yes, in such a strong wind, it dared to open its sails. Driven by the bulging sails, this warship, which was only half the size of the flagship of the Qingting Island fleet, approached quickly like a sharp arrow. The sharp bow of the ship smashed through the huge waves like a blade, and a black iron girl loomed among the rolled-up piles of white snow. She stands on the bow of the ship, with one arm stretched out, thick black iron hair fluttering behind her head, a pair of eyes made of bright white pearls, shining with the brilliance of thunder and lightning, but she has no mouth. At this time, Samuel finally saw the name of the warship. Serenity. Chapter 116. The Crow's Eye. The dead don't die. The dexterous longboats were cruising among the huge waves, and they kept shouting excitedly and madly, "The dead don't die! The dead don't die!" Ellipsis. Under the light of lightning, small boats surrounded like a pack of wolves. And the Wolf King just came to the right side of Qingting Island's flagship Purple Grape, walking side by side with it. Samuel clearly saw the banner of a golden sea monster flying on the Serenity, and the crew members on the deck were brandishing scimitars and roaring silently. In their open mouths, none of them have tongues. "The dead will not die, but will rise again, and its power will be stronger," cried the only man on the Serenity with a tongue. His skin is as pale as snow, and his appearance is as handsome as a prince in a fairy tale. His blue right eye is smiling, while his left eye is covered by a pitch-black eye patch. "Euron, Crow's Eye, Greyjoy." Samuel immediately recognized the person's identity. The Greyjoy family is the ruling family of the Iron Islands. The people under their rule call themselves Ironmen. Both are menial jobs, and only plundering is the most honorable career. Because of this, the Ironmen have always been the most fearsome and ferocious pirates in Westeros. When the Targaryen family conquered Westeros, the Greyjoy family also bowed their heads to the Iron Throne and restrained the Iron people under their rule, forcing them to abandon the ancient road of plundering and live a life of farming, fishing, hard and unremarkable life like mining. However, the Ironborn never gave up their pursuit of the glorious and beautiful, ancient road. The looting gene has always existed in their bodies, and forcible suppression will only accumulate dissatisfaction and lead to rebellion. During the rule of the Targaryen family, the Iron Islands really set off rebellions many times, but they were suppressed again and again. After the War of the Reavers, the Greyjoy family surrendered to the new King Robert Baratheon. But only 6 years later, the Iron Islands could not bear the hard and boring life and rebelled again. However, this rebellion was also suppressed, and the Iron Islands fell silent again. Samuel didn't expect that he would meet the Ironborn pirates in the narrow sea, and the leader was the craziest and most dangerous, Crow's Eye, Euron in the Greyjoy family. He remembered that Euron should have been exiled by his elder brother, Beren, the current patriarch of the Greyjoy family, and then led his men to travel and plunder all over the world. However, I am afraid that this must be, thanks to Hobber Redwin's death. Euron, Crow's Eye, probably didn't want to attract too much attention, so he didn't dare to plunder. On the main route, he just hid in this sea area near the Stone Step Islands and robbed some passing small merchant ships. Unexpectedly, 5 ships with the flag of Qingting Island were sent in by themselves. Although the current Iron Islands are still under suppression, Euron the Crow's Eye, a lunatic exiled by his brother, obviously won't abide by the laws of the 7 kingdoms. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Amid the sound of breaking through the air, spears were thrown by the pirates with the help of the wind. Samuel squatted decisively, hiding himself behind the side of the boat. There is no way, this black light is blind, he can't see the spear on the opposite side at all. Afterwards, he heard the sound of spears piercing the hull and the screams of the sailors on board. Fight back, fight back. This is the voice of Horus commanding the battle. Unfortunately, the pirates cleverly gained the upper hand. If the soldiers on Qingting Island wanted to fight back, they had to throw spears against the wind or shoot bows and arrows. But in this way, the power will be greatly reduced. In addition, the pirate ships are small and flexible, making it difficult to target them. Seeing that the counterattack could not achieve results, Horace simply ordered the soldiers to stop and wait for the pirates to board the ship before counterattacking. Samwell took advantage of this time to gather several of his guards. He only brought 50 guards with him this time, but none of them had experience in naval warfare. In such a storm, there were only a few of them who could climb onto the deck and successfully find him. It was his first vassal, Knight Lucas Dane, who performed very well. He obviously had sailing experience, and he could walk on the ground even on a violently shaking ship. "Master Caesar, you'd better go back to the cabin, I'll guard it outside." "No, I want to fight side by side with you." Lucas didn't persuade him anymore, but just handed the oak shield in his hand to Samwell. Samwell didn't refuse. He didn't expect a battle when he came out just now, so he didn't bring a weapon at all. However, he has already asked his attendant to go to the room to get the giant sword done. "The pirates are on board," Lucas suddenly reminded. Samwell shivered slightly, and then saw the first pirate appear on the side of the ship. Lucas was the first to charge up with his sword, chopping down the pirate, but the pirate still hooked the climbing rope when he fell, shook a few times in the storm, and started climbing again. The sharp whistle sounded at the same time, and with it, there was the roar of Horus commanding the battle. After a while, more and more pirates appeared on the side of the ship. They wore gray leather armor, held half-moon-shaped scimitars, and a few even held battle axes. They jumped nimbly on the side of the ship and on the deck, as if the strong wind and waves had no effect on them at all. The sounds of fighting became dense all of a sudden. Samwell also had to carry his shield to join the battle. But he didn't just rush forward, but first let himself adapt to the violently shaking and slippery deck, and tried to find his balance. It wasn't until a blind pirate ran up to Samwell that he swung his shield and smashed it into the opponent's chest. The pirate's scimitar hit the shield, but he was knocked out of his hand. Before he could cry out in pain, the shield smashed against his chest with great force. Boom! The pirate's chest was completely sunken, and blood mixed with internal organs spewed out from his mouth crazily, splashing Samwell all over. Before Samwell could catch his breath, another pirate rushed over with a tomahawk. This time he controlled his strength well, first dodged the opponent's slash, and then swung the shield to smash the opponent until he vomited blood and collapsed to the ground. Snatching the tomahawk from the opponent's hand, Samwell took advantage of the opportunity to make another blow. Claw! A big wave hit, and the turbulent sea overflowed the deck. Both sides in the battle were overturned by this huge wave. Samwell slammed his axe into the side of the ship, trying to stabilize his body. Looking up again, I saw a vigorous figure turning out of the huge waves. That person stood firmly on the narrow side of the ship, his feet seemed to be nailed to it, and no amount of violent shaking could make him lose his balance. The strong wind blew up the black cloak behind him, revealing the golden sea monster coat of arms on it. "Sheep of the green land, we have come to pay the iron money. Put down your arms, and I will give you a decent death." Crow's Eye, Euron Greyjoy actually boarded the ship too. Samwell looked at this arrogant figure, licked the corner of his mouth, his eyes narrowed into a narrow slit. Chapter 117 Forced to retreat. Euron Greyjoy, are you Iron Islands going to rebel against the Iron Throne again? Horace's questioning voice seemed weak in the storm. Euron didn't even bother to answer this kind of question. He smiled evilly and jumped onto the deck nimbly, just avoiding a soldier from Arbor Island. Chick! A scimitar with a unique shape pierced the chest of another Chinking Island soldier, and then lifted it up. Thick blood gushed out, and the soldiers' heads and necks were cut open, leaving only the headless corpse standing in front of Euron. The dead never die. Euron was drenched in blood, like a demon coming out of hell, frightening the surrounding Chinking Island soldiers to dare not step forward. "I don't think you will die." Horace roared wildly, and rushed up, waving his long sword. The long sword intersected with the scimitar, but Horace's heart sank, because he found that the opponent's knife had no strength at all. I don't know if it was a coincidence, but a huge wave happened to hit, and the whole warship tilted because of it. Horace didn't stand still, and his center of gravity rushed forward. But Euron seemed to be unconstrained by gravity, but walked up the sloping deck. The two people passed by staggered. Hora's complexion changed drastically, as if falling into an ice cellar. The next moment, a sharp pain came from his left back shoulder blade, which made him scream out. Fortunately he was wearing light armor, as Euron's scimitar slammed into the weak spot of the joint and jammed, but Horus had completely lost his balance, and he hit the side of the ship with a bang. The dead never die, they will rise again. Euron laughed out loud, and was about to come up to fix the eldest son of Chinking Island. But at this moment, his blue pupils suddenly shrank. Boom! A tomahawk slams down where Euron would have been, ripping a hole in the deck. Among the flying sawdust, Samwell continued to track the black figure. Although he wished that the Redwyn brothers would die at the hands of pirates, he really couldn't let them die now. After all, the soldiers on Chinking Island still need to rely on them to command, and when a strong enemy is attacking, internal strife is the most stupid way. He's not that idiot Hopper. Boom! Samwell threw another pirate in front of him into the air, but he still couldn't touch Euron's clothes. Euron also saw Samwell's terrifying power, so he deliberately didn't fight him head-on. He walked, like flying on the violently turbulent deck, and even made movements that violated the laws of physics. Nowhere to use. Damn it! Samwell realized more and more that it was a very unwise move to fight someone like crows. At sea. The sea in the storm is simply this person's playground. So, instead of wasting energy chasing, he stopped in place, holding a shield in one hand and a battle axe in the other, his eyes fixed on Euron's figure, waiting for the opponent to attack first. At this time, Euron was hanging from a broken mast by a rope, looking at Samwell who had stopped. He opened his blue lips, and let out a maniacal smile. The dead will not die, but will rise again, and its power will be stronger. As soon as the words fell, a bolt of lightning suddenly pierced the night sky, and the intense light blinded everyone for a moment. At this time, the warship was just sent to the top of the waves by the huge waves, and there was a short stay in the air. The strong sense of weightlessness made Samwell stagger, and what made him even more flustered was that the black figure on the mast was gone. Boom! The battleship smashed back to the sea, and the violent impact caused everyone on the deck to stagger, except Euron. He did not know when he came behind Samwell, and the scimitar in his hand was like a dark asterisk of death, silently slashing towards the neck. The strong sense of crisis made Samwell suddenly roll on the ground, and then avoided the fatal blow. But Euron was in control, laughing maniacally and chasing after him. Samwell fled in embarrassment. The violently shaking deck and the pursuit behind him made him have no time to regain his balance. The battle axe in his hand was also lost, leaving only the shield. Seeing that Euron was like a Tarsus behind him, and several pirates surrounded him, Samwell gritted his teeth and slammed into the cabin. Boom! The wooden wall exploded under the huge impact. Samwell rolled a few times on the ground and finally got up. Looking back, Euron didn't chase after him. He breathed a sigh of relief, calmed down his heartbeat, and then got out of the big hole in the wall again. The wind and rain are blowing, carrying a strong smell of blood. The situation on the deck seemed to be very bad. The soldiers on Chinking Island were completely suppressed and beaten by the pirates. Samwell finds Euron again and finds him wrestling with Knight Lucas Dane. Just as he was about to step forward to help, Samwell suddenly turned his head and looked to the right. Hopper Redwyn, the second son of the Earl of Chinking Island, hid in a dark corner holding a sword, and turned his head guiltily after seeing Samwell's gaze. But Samwell just stared at him until he couldn't take it anymore and turned around to fight. Damn idiot, sooner or later I will kill you. Samwell looked at Hope's back and cursed secretly. My lord, your sword. The attendant Cadu finally took the giant sword, Dawn. Samwell quickly threw away the shield and took the great sword. Holding the cold sword hilt with his right hand, his anxious heart suddenly calmed down, his eyes slowly swept across the audience, and he shouted at the Lucas Knight in front of him. Lucas, get down. Lucas heard his lord's call, but he couldn't understand the meaning at all. He was under great pressure from Euron at this time, and he didn't dare to distract him. But the next moment, he felt a fiery and terrifying aura rising from his side. Lucas finally couldn't help turning his head, and saw Samwell slowly pulling out the giant sword. Dawn. On the body of the milky white glass-like sword, red and golden mysterious lines reappeared. Again, and more, until they densely covered the entire body of the sword. As the giant sword was slowly unsheathed, the inscription burned violently, and every line seemed to spew out red flames. Looking from a distance, Samuel seemed to be holding a fire. The icy torrential downpour could not dim the flame even a bit. The raging sea wind stopped suddenly, and the turbulent waves suddenly calmed down. At this moment, the originally manic sea seemed to hold its breath suddenly, waiting for something. Welcoming something. The giant sword was unsheathed. Lucas finally understood what Samuel meant, and saw that the old knight no longer cared about the threat of his opponent, and made a move that could be called suicide on the battlefield. Get down. Yurun didn't take the opportunity to make up the knife. He seemed to realize something, turned around without hesitation, jumped, and threw himself into the dark sea. The red sword light poured down like a volcanic eruption. Boom! The lightning like a silver snake also covered the night sky, but it still couldn't cover up the brilliance of the sword light. A dozen pirates and 3 or 4 unlucky Qingting Island soldiers were swept by the sword light, instantly turning into of flames. The side of the ship was also shattered by the sword light, turning into countless burning fireballs and falling into the sea. It's a pity that Yoron still escaped. The sword light only cut off his black cloak, the golden sea monster's coat of arms on it was scorched and distorted in the flames, and it was finally unrecognizable. The world fell silent, and everyone stared dumbfounded at the tall figure holding the huge flaming sword. The next moment, the pirates jumped into the sea one after another as if waking up from a dream, and fled. Woo! The retreat horn finally sounded, and the pirate ships quietly disappeared into the darkness. Until then, Samuel slowly returned Dawn to the scabbard. Actually, he could no longer swing the second sword at this time. The blow just now almost took all the strength out of his whole body. Fortunately, the storm has stopped, otherwise he would not even have the strength to stand firmly on the deck. But fortunately, the enemy has been scared away. The surviving soldiers of Qingting Island let out strange screams of excitement, celebrating the victory of the rest of their lives, and shouting Samuel's name. A round of crescent moon reappeared in the sky, casting cool light on the sea that had just returned to calm. Chapter 118. The northbound rose. The huge convoy slowly drove out of High Court. Both sides of the road were crowded with people who came to see him off. On a luxurious carriage with hundreds of golden roses carved on the side, Highgarden rose. Marjorie Tyrell lifted the curtains and waved to the crowd on the side of the road. Whenever she passed by, the crowd erupted into cheers. Women raised their children to ask her to bless her. Men stared at her beautiful face and shouted her name. Children excitedly spread bright rose petals sprinkle on the top of her head until her brown curls are colorful. The convoy drove for nearly 5 miles along the Rose Avenue, and the crowd of seeing off gradually thinned out. Marjorie lowered the curtain, cleaned off the petals on her body with the assistance of the maid, and washed her face with warm spring water. I'm afraid there is no nobleman who can win so much love from the commoners as you. Garland Tyrell looked at his sister with a smile and said with emotion. Margaret untied the headband, letting her long, soft and curly hair hang over her shoulders, and said with a smile, how could it be? There are too many nobles who are more famous than me, Aegon the Conqueror, Nymeria the Warrior Queen, Savin the Mirror Shield. Everyone knows their stories. Quote, it's different. Garland shook his head. Aegon Targaryen's power and fame come from his dragon. Nymeria conquered Dorne with a halberd, Mirror Shield. Savin can be chanted the bard has been passed down to this day because he was able to defeat the dragon and save the princess, and people respect them more than they love them, but throughout the ages, there are really very few nobles who can conquer the people without relying on force. What about Baelor? He didn't rely on force to win the hearts of the people, did he? Blessed, Baelor did not rely on force, but he borrowed the brilliance of the 7 gods, and he was too fanatical and made many stupid decisions. Garland looked at his sister with burning eyes. This time go to King's Landing. I believe you will be able to conquer the people there with your charm, and even win the love that no king in the history of the Iron Throne has ever received. Brother, I'm ashamed of what you said. If outsiders hear it, they may think that our Tyrell family is a bunch of arrogant lunatics. Ha ha ha. Garland laughed, and stopped talking about the topic just now, and instead said, I Wanted Velas to come with me this time, just to relax, but unfortunately he refused. Thinking of the grievances between her elder brother Velas and Prince Oberon, Marjorie shook her head. It's better not to, otherwise Velas meets Prince Oberon, who knows what will happen again. Garland sneered. I just want my elder brother to come and watch Oberon Martell stand trial, and even be convicted and beheaded. Margaret changed her position on the soft recliner, and said a little uneasy. I don't really want to see Prince Oberon convicted. Garland couldn't help but frown, and reminded. Sister, did you forget that this Red Viper broke our brother's leg? Of course I haven't forgotten. I haven't forgotten the hatred between Huon and Dornay for thousands of years. But, you know, although it has been so long, every night when the night is quiet, I can't help thinking of the scene before Lord John Arryn died. His last cry always echoed in his ears. I often think about it too. Garland nodded solemnly. Duke John is a respectable old man. That's right. Marjorie stretched out her hand to brush the messy hair around her ears, and there was a little light in her brown eyes. Duke John said before he died that he believed that Prince Oberon was not the murderer who poisoned him, but he just didn't. I hope that my death will spark more violent conflict. If His Majesty convicts Prince Oberon, perhaps all of Duke John's painstaking efforts will be in vain. Garland shrugged. But guilty is guilty. The Seven Gods will not tolerate people like Oberon Martell taking advantage of Duke John's kindness to get away with it. Speaking of which, I actually don't quite believe that Prince Oberon is the murderer who poisoned Duke John. Garland looked at his sister with an incredible gaze, and shouted. Oh, Marjorie, why do you have such an idea? You saw the situation at the time. Oberon clearly wanted to kill Duke John. Everyone thought so. No, not everyone. Marjorie had a faint smile on her lips. Baron Caesar also thinks that Prince Oberon is not the real murderer. What's the reason? When the Duke's body was sent away that day, Sam once whispered to me that if Prince Oberon did it, he would never appear at the banquet wearing armor and holding a halberd, because he was afraid that others would not suspect him as the murderer. Garland pondered for a moment, rubbed his chin, and said, there is some truth in saying that. But it's also possible that Oberon deliberately played this game to remove his suspicion. Besides, who else would poison Duke John? I don't know about that. Sam guessed that some conspirator might deliberately blame Prince Oberon for Duke John's death. Garland laughed loudly. Sister, this Baron Caesar is very thoughtful. Does he know who this conspirator is? He didn't say. Garland spread his hands. So, this guy is also pretending to be deep and guessing randomly. There are so many conspiracies and tricks in this world. And among the people present at the time, I can't think of anyone else who has this ability and motivation to poison Lord John. Marjorie grinned. Brother, but Grandma also agrees with Sam. Grandma. The smile on Garland's face disappeared immediately. Regarding Lady Olenna's judgment, Garland certainly did not dare to refute it lightly. The wisdom of this old lady is the key to the Tyrell family's ability to secure the position of Duke of Highgarden. For half a century, after a while, Garland spoke again. Did Grandma say who was behind the death of Duke John? No, Grandmother doesn't seem too sure. Then did she say what we should pay attention to when we come to King's Landing this time? Grandma said, let's come here to watch a big show. When she said this, doubts appeared on Marjorie's delicate face. A big show, yes, but Grandma didn't say much. I guess she should think that there may be follow-up to the death of Duke John. If this is really the trick of some conspirator, then the trial of Prince Oberon. This time, he will also make a move. Garland frowned and thought for a moment, and finally smiled in relief. Forget it, even if there is a conspiracy, it is a conspiracy against Dornay, so let Martell have a headache. Since Grandma just let us watch the show, it means that this conspiracy will not involve Highgarden. Marjorie nodded approvingly. Yes. Compared to this, there is another matter that gave Grandma a headache. Garland immediately understood. You are talking about Velas's marriage, right? Yes. Marjorie frowned slightly, and sighed. I know my grandmother, she was really angry when Earl Alistair Florent refused to marry his granddaughter to Velas. HMPH. I also don't understand what that old guy in Brightwater City is thinking. Even if Velas has a broken leg, he is still the heir of Geoding. Isn't he worthy of his granddaughter? Garland waved his hand angrily. He smashed the books in the small table heavily. The old guy still wants to marry his granddaughter to Baron Caesar. Marjorie shook her head lightly. No, I heard that the little Florent girl is engaged to Dickon Tarley. Dickon, not his brother. No. However, in fact, the nature is similar. Grandma thinks that the Florens family clearly rejected the olive branch extended by the Tyrell family, and they are all thinking about building an alliance with the Horn-Tali family. Oh, yes, this alliance plus Yingzui Island, and even Starfall City. No wonder Grandma is angry. Garland curled his lips, then suddenly thought of something, and said, by the way, isn't that Baron Caesar the knight you handbooked yourself? Could it be that your charm can't make him approach high court? Quote, Marjorie rolled her cute eyes. Brother, you overestimate my charm. In fact, although Sam didn't say it clearly, I know that during the last war with Dornay, high court has kept silent. A rift has been carved in his heart. Hey, it may not be so easy to make up for it in the future. Quote, who would have known that kid could fight so well at the time? Garland also shook his head and sighed. I'm afraid he will be another Randall Tarley in the future. We really miscalculated last time. Marjorie also sighed, and fell into silence. Her deer-like eyes were shining brightly, and she didn't know what she was thinking. Starting from High Court, head north along the Rose Avenue all the way to King's Landing. The speed of the Tyrell family's convoy was not fast, and they stayed at Bitter Bridge in the Royal Forest for a few days to rest. By the time they arrived in King's Landing, it was already more than 20 days later. Loris. Marjorie leaned out of the car window and waved her arms to the third brother who came to greet her. Little sister, haha, long time no see, you look beautiful again. Loris Tyrell came to the side of the Wheel Palace on a white horse, and when he saw his second brother poked his head out. Garland, why are you getting fat again? Quote, Garland threw the leftover nutshell at his younger brother, and scolded with a smile, I'm not getting fat. Loris smiled and avoided. No, no. You are stronger. Garland snorted softly. Boy, let's compare when we have time to see if your spear skills have fallen. Okay. Loris readily agreed. Let's go, I'll take you into the city. Marjorie lay by the window, looking at the towering city wall not far away, and asked, is His Majesty in the city? Not here. Loris rode on the side of the carriage. Your Majesty has gone to Winterfell. Winterfell. Marjorie's eyes flashed with surprise. Is he going to invite Eddard Stark, the Duke of the North, to come to King's Landing as the hand of the king? Exactly. It's really Duke Ed. Marjorie's mouth slightly turned up. It seems that what Grandma said is right. This Northern Wolf King is our king's real brother. Chapter 119 The Wolf Going South. Ed, I have always regarded you as a true brother. In the cold and deep cellar of Winterfell, King Robert spoke. The rough voice echoed in the silent passage. Your Majesty, call me Robert. Duke Ed was interrupted by the king as soon as he started. Robert. A warm feeling rose in Duke Ed's heart, and the strangeness and estrangement that hadn't been seen for more than 10 years seemed to disappear at this moment. The man in front of him was still the lawless Robert Baratheon back then. Duke Ed is no longer restrained. Back then we drank together, fought together, and received Jon's teachings together. Speaking of Jon Arryn's name, his tone was full of sadness. I have never forgotten the friendship between us, so no matter what request you have, I will agree. Okay, then follow me to King's Landing, be my hand of the king, and help me manage this damned country. Duke Ed just hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, good. Ha ha ha. Robert laughed loudly, his voice echoing in the darkness. That's great. Believe me, you won't regret it. Compared with the bitter cold in the north, the south is much warmer. Especially now it's summer, and the field is full of flowers and green grass as far as the eye can see. The sweet fruit can burst in your mouth, and wine, oh yes, a new wine called brandy has been spread in the river bend recently. The taste, it's really exciting. You must try it. Duke Ed smiled slightly, but didn't answer. He is not a pleasure-seeking person, but the king next to him is just the opposite. And Lord Eddard could not fail to notice the price Robert paid for his sensuality. When they came to the depths of the tomb, the crowned stag, who once dominated the battlefield and was invincible, was already panting and sweating profusely. Robert, right here. Duke Eddard stood before the 3 sarcophagi lined up side by side. The tightly closed sarcophagus was engraved with the face of the deceased, and the huge, roaring direwolf statue was curled up at their feet, and a long steel sword was placed on top of the stone statue. It is said that this is to ensure that the wraiths are sealed in the mausoleum so that they will not wreak havoc outside. The sarcophagus in the middle is engraved with the face of Duke Eddard's father, the previous Duke of the North, Rickard Stark. On his right hand rests his eldest son, Brandon Stark. The father and son both died at the hands of the Mad King, Aerys Targaryen, before the War of the Reavers. At this time, Robert's eyes were fixed on the statue on the 3rd sarcophagus. She is much more beautiful than this statue. After a moment of oppressive silence, the king spoke. His eyes were full of nostalgia and pain, as if this could bring his former fiancée back to the world. Back then, for Miss Lyanna Stark, Robert rebelled in anger. Although he has driven the Targaryen royal family off the Iron Throne and avenged his wife, if he could, he would rather use that the cold and twisted throne trades her awakening. She shouldn't sleep here, cried Robert. She shouldn't be in the cold and dark. She should be buried in the beautiful hills, with the sun and the white clouds. She is Stark, she belongs here. Duke Eddard retorted calmly. She was meant to marry me. She also belongs to Baratheon. I was by her side when she died. Duke Eddard reminded. She told me that she just wanted to go home, to Winterfell. Robert said no more. Duke Ed also fell into memory. He will never forget the scene before his sister died in this life. In that **** room, she begged bitterly, until Ed nodded. She smiled and closed her eyes. For the promise to his sister back then, Duke Eddard brought her and Rhaegar Targaryen's child back to the northern border, declaring that it was his own illegitimate child. Name: Jon Snow. This is the child of his enemy, but also the child of his sister. Thinking of the name of this illegitimate son, Duke Ed became more and more sad. Jon, how did he die? I don't know. Robert suddenly became irritable. Ed, I really don't know. Damn it, I'm surrounded by liars and fools. Only Jon Arryn, only he I can completely trust, but now that he's dead, I wouldn't come to Winterfell to find you if I had other options. Help me, Ed, I need your help. I will. Duke Eddard said solemnly, I will definitely find out the truth about Jon's death. I have ordered the Red Viper to come to King's Landing. He should be here when we return. At that time, you can interrogate him. Okay. Duke Ed paused for a while. Lisa, and that child, are they all okay? Robert shook his head bitterly. Frankly, it didn't seem so good. Lisa was terrified by her husband's death, and she fled back to the Eyrie with her son. But Jon had no brothers, and only one son. How could I let them stay in the valley orphaned and widowed? And she also believed that the Red Viper poisoned Jon to death, and wrote to ask me to avenge him. How did I hear that Jon said before his death that his death had nothing to do with the Red Viper? There is such a saying. Robert became irritable again. But Ed, you also know the character of the old man. He has regarded glory above everything else in his life, and he may not really believe in the Red Viper. If he did this before he died, didn't hurt him. I understand. I will find out. After a while of silence, Duke Ed said again, let's go up. The queen is still waiting. Let her wait, cried Robert angrily. She hasn't been kind to me all this time. Damned woman, she's been thinking all day about having the old lion of Castle Rock as the hand of the king. But how is that possible? I have a Lannister in my bed, a Lannister in the Kingsguard, a Lannister in the Squire. Damn, I wake up every day and see the golden hair of the Lannisters. Want me to find another Lannister to run the country? Damn it, just let me just give them the Iron Throne. Lannister, Your Majesty, I've said it all, don't call me Your Majesty again. Robert called out, but seeing the long serious face of his old friend beside him, he finally shook his head helplessly. You Starks are as rigid as the ice in the north. No fun. Come on, old man, let's go up. Ellipsis. Quiet. Bran Stark on the tree bowed his head to the little wolf below. It was a small gift brought back by his father, Duke Ed, when he went hunting a month ago. A total of 6 newborn wolves, just happened to be one for each of the Duke's 6 children, and even the illegitimate son Jon Snow got one. The direwolf is the coat of arms of the Stark family, so the children were very excited. They named the little wolves. The eldest son Rob's was called Grey Wind, Sansa's was Lady Nymeria, Rickon's Shaggy Dog, Jon's White Spirit, and Bran, he hasn't figured out what to call his pup yet. Hearing the master's scolding, the little wolf lay down on the ground aggrieved, not daring to bark again. Bran continued to climb, jumped from the tree to the roof of the armory, jumped to the roof of the guard room, and finally climbed the outer wall of the ruined tower. The young second son of the Duke was agile, climbing the steep walls like an ape. Bran can't remember when he started, but he likes to climb. His mother always said that he could climb before he learned to walk, and then the high walls of the old castle became his playground. They always try to stop Bran from this dangerous hobby. Unfortunately, as long as they didn't pay attention, the little guy had disappeared between the high walls of the ancient castle. Hanging in the air, Bran took a break. If he was a little taller, he would be able to see the group of crows, and he also brought corn kernels specially to feed those gluttons. Just when Bran regained some strength and was about to continue, he suddenly heard a faint gasp. The voice seemed to be mixed with pain and joy. The young Bran didn't know what the sound represented, but he crawled over driven by curiosity. How could there be someone in the ruined tower? He wondered. Bran sat astride the gargoyle statue, his legs clamped, and he turned his head upside down, and then he saw the scene in the room. A man and a woman are writhing together, and are naked. It's Queen Cersei Lannister and her brother Jaime Lannister. Bran panicked. His brain was dizzy for a while. He quickly hooked the gargoyle statue hard, but he still fell down. Ah! He let out a scream, but fortunately he caught the window lattice dangerously on the way down. There was also a scream in the room, followed by Queen Cersei's voice. Someone is there. Bran grabbed the window lattice with one hand, shaking in midair, almost out of breath. Then, he saw the faces of two people leaning out of the window. He has seen us, screamed Queen Cersei. He saw us. James nodded. Seeing the little boy's fingers start to loosen, he leaned out, stretched his hand down, and said, "Boy, grab my hand." Bran hurriedly grabbed the man's hand with all his strength, and the man pulled him to the windowsill. "What do you want?" Cersei demanded. He saw us. James grabbed Bran by the collar and asked, "Boy, how old are you?" 7 years old. Bran trembled a little. He saw us. Cersei screamed again. James turned to look at his sister, and said in a helpless and flat tone, "Think about it, what have I done for love?" As soon as the voice fell, he pushed hard. Bran flew out the window screaming as the ground hit him at a frantic pace. Boom! There was a sad wolf howling in the distance. Ellipsis. Has he not woken up yet? Duke Ed looked at Bran lying on the bed and asked sadly. Catelyn by the bed did not respond to her husband. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes seemed to have not been washed for several days, her eyes were red and swollen, but she looked at her comatose son without blinking. "I have to go, Catelyn," Duke Eddie whispered, but unfortunately he still didn't get a response from his wife. "The gods will bless Bran." He leaned over and kissed his wife lightly on the head, then turned and walked out of the room. The long line drove out of Winterfell, and then divided into two groups. The larger one went south, and the smaller one went north. "Black matches you well." Duke Ed looked at his illegitimate son. "I'm proud of you." Jon Snow stared into his father's eyes, and finally couldn't help asking the question hidden in his heart. "Father, I'm going to the Great Wall of Immortality to become a night watchman. Can you tell me who my mother is?" Duke Ed fell into silence. In a trance, he seemed to hear the whisper of his sister Lyanna before she died. "Promise me, Ed, promise me. I'll tell you when we meet next time." Duke Ed promised. "Okay, take care father. Take care of yourself." The two waved goodbye, one to the north and one to the south. Chapter 120 Arrival. What's this smell? On the port, Natalie was still marveling at the majestic and huge city in front of her just now, but she suddenly covered her mouth and nose in the next second. Samwell said with a smile, "The smell of feces, sweat, garbage, and rot. If any city gathers 500,000 people, it will smell like this. It's so scary." Natalie suddenly lost her love for the first city in the Seven Kingdoms, and all the longing in her heart turned into light smoke in the pungent smell. "Don't worry, Miss Natalie," Hopper Redwyn comforted from the side, "this is the smell of those untouchables. Once you enter the Red Keep, it won't be like this." Samwell sneered. the taste of the Red Castle is even worse. Huh, Natalie panicked even more. How is that possible? Hopper countered, Sam, don't talk nonsense if you haven't been to the Red Keep. Samwell ignored him, turned around and went down the gangway. Natalie hurriedly followed. Sam, what's the smell in the Red Castle? Why is it worse? Red Fort, that smells of lies and conspiracy. Natalie was taken aback, and immediately hugged Samwell's arms even tighter. A group of people left the port, walked through the crowded streets, and went straight to Aegon Hill. The bronze gate of the Red Keep was in sight, but Hobber Redwyn suddenly exclaimed. Look, is that Miss Marjorie? She actually came to greet us in person. It's really Miss Marjorie. Horace Redwyn immediately straightened his chest on the horse, and, at the same time secretly regretted that he didn't wear armor or a dress, and he was injured in the previous sea battle, and now his arms are hanging. How embarrassing it is. Damn Euron Greyjoy. Horace cursed secretly, but still showed what he thought was the most charming smile on his face. When they came close, the two brothers got off their horses and saluted. Miss Marjorie. Marjorie is wearing a white pleated skirt today, tied with a golden ribbon at the waist, and a green cloak printed with rose patterns on her shoulders. Her soft brown curly hair is tied with a diamond-encrusted headband, but still swaying mischievously in the wind. Sir Horace, Sir Hobber, it's been a tough journey. Are you in a fight? The sweet smile of the Duke's daughter made the two brothers ecstatic, and Horace hurriedly said loudly, Yes, we encountered a group of pirates on the way, but we have already repelled them. Huh, there are still pirates. Are your injuries okay? It's just a minor injury. Horace wanted to move his injured hand to show that he was fine, but the severe pain from the wound made his face contort, making him look even more ridiculous. That's good. Marjorie pretended not to see Horace's bravado, passed the two brothers, and faced Samwell and Natalie behind. Miss Natalie, you are so beautiful today. Marjorie gave Natalie a warm hug, and then kissed the little girl's pink cheek. Natalie didn't expect Marjorie to be so enthusiastic, and she was a little at a loss for a while. Her little face was flushed, and she quickly kissed back with a slightly awkward kiss. Miss Marjorie, you are also very beautiful. Sam, my knight. Marjorie smiled and looked at Samwell again, stretching out her slender and white right hand in front of him. Miss Marjorie. Samwell took Marjorie's hand and pressed a kiss between his fingers. Afterwards, Marjorie turned to Samwell's right, took his arm naturally, and said, Let's go into the castle and just tell me about your encounter with pirates. Okay. Samwell nodded with a smile, and placed his left hand in front of Natalie. Natalie quickly grabbed her arm. So, under the envious eyes of the Redwyn brothers, Samwell led the two beautiful ladies from left to right, and walked into the gate of the Red Castle swaggeringly. Ellipsis. Wow, killed more than a dozen pirates with one sword. Sam, you're not bragging, are you? Of course not. Before Samwell could speak, Natalie defended him. At that time, everyone on the deck saw that Lord Caesar was waving a long sword that was burning with fire, and he killed so many people at once. The pirates are all killed. Miss Natalie said so, it must be true. Margaret smiled sweetly at Natalie, instantly making the little girl's affection for her soar to the extreme. Samwell smiled and said modestly, Actually, that battle was thanks to the brave and skilled soldiers of the Redwyn family. Of course, there were two more fearless knights, Sir Horace, who fought against the pirate leader alone, and was honorably wounded. Really, Sir Horace, you are so brave. Marjorie turned her head to Horace at the right time. Horace immediately straightened his chest, and said loudly, This is what I should do, Miss Marjorie. It's a pity that Euron Greyjoy ran too fast, otherwise I would cut off his head and hang it on the top of King's Landing. I believe you can. Marjorie smiled, and then she realized something. Euron Greyjoy. Is he from the Iron Islands? Yes. Samwell took over the words. However, Euron has been exiled by his brother, and the Iron Islands are still honest now, so there is no need to worry too much. Well, then we have to report to His Majesty and ask him to order this person wanted. I will. By the way, is His Majesty in King's Landing? Not here. His Majesty has gone to Winterfell. Counting the time, he should be back soon. Winterfell. Samwell chewed on the place name and smiled silently. Everything seems to be back to the original plot, as if the River of Fate is still trying to get back on track under the correction of the original river course after hitting an unexpected reef. But Samuel knew that everything could not go back. The main plot has changed, even if some details are still the same, but it is already 2 stories. The next King's Landing stage will be the trial of the Red Viper. Thinking of this, Samuel asked, "Have Prince Oberon and the others come?" "Here we come. But that Prince Oberon goes to the great sept of Baelor every day, and it is said that he has been praying devoutly in front of the rainbow pool." Samuel blinked, thinking to himself, which game is the Red Viper playing? "Plead guilty," Margaret said again. Princess Ariane, however, has been visiting various nobles in King's Landing these days. She probably wants to help her uncle win contacts. In the future, someone will help speak out and clear up the suspicion. I guess she will soon coming to us. Samuel smiled slightly, not knowing what he thought of. Through the front hall, the castle master arranged for servants to take the newly arrived nobles to their respective rooms. Samuel and the others bid farewell to Marjorie, and made an appointment to go to the garden for afternoon tea after taking a break. Going back to the room, putting down and saluting, after washing up and putting on new clothes, Samuel went out. He didn't go to the garden immediately, but wandered casually in the Red Castle. This ancient castle is filled with a depressing and solemn atmosphere, and the walls made of light red rocks always have a fresh feeling, as if it is a living creature. Samuel lived at the northernmost corner of the Red Castle. At a glance, he could see the White Sword Tower, which was much higher than the outer wall. That was where the 7 white knights of the Kingsguard lived. As the king's personal guards, the royal guards represent the highest honor in the field of knights. They swear allegiance to the king, no fiefdoms, no wives, no children, and they only guard this oath all their lives. Of course, whether you can keep it or not is another matter. Go south a few steps and you will see the towering Prime Minister's Tower, which is where the former Prime Minister and the Hand of the King lived. Further south of the Prime Minister's Tower is Maegor's Tower, a tall building located in the center of the Red Castle surrounded by a moat filled with iron spikes and guarded by fully armed guards. It is a castle within a castle. It is also where the royal bedroom is located. Samuel was about to move on when he saw a familiar figure walking out of Maegor's Tower. He stopped and greeted enthusiastically. "Lord Petter." Littlefinger, Petter Baelish froze for a moment, then showed a faint smile, and strode towards Samuel. "Baron Caesar, we meet again." "Yes, Lord Petter, I'm so happy to see a familiar face here." Samuel smiled sincerely. "I'm afraid you don't know, this is my first time in the Red Castle. The atmosphere here makes me flustered." "Haha, don't be nervous." Petter enthusiastically put his arms around Samuel's shoulders, as if he was guiding his nephew. "I tell you, you only need to keep one thing in mind here, and then you will be fine." "Which point?" Samuel asked quickly. Petter pointed to a red wall with many angels painted on it. "Do you see the eyes on it?" "I see." "Good. They saw us too." Samuel was stunned for a moment, but before he could ask any questions, Petter pointed to the bushes where the insects were buzzing. "Have you heard their voices?" "I heard." Samuel seemed to understand. "They heard us too." Petter showed a characteristic narrow smile. "Do you understand?" "I see, Lord Petter. You mean, there are eyes and ears everywhere, right?" "Smart." Petter nodded with satisfaction. "I knew you were a smart person the first time I saw you. As a result, you really shined in Starfall City, and your name was remembered by the entire 7 kingdoms. But I believe, Baron Yingzeu, this is by no means the end for you. You have a bright future, thanks to your guidance and help," Samuel said respectfully. "Haha, who made our experiences so similar? Sam, if you have time, come and sit at my house. There are no extra eyes and ears, we can talk well." "Okay, Lord Petter, I will definitely pay a visit when I have time." Petter patted Samuel on the shoulder with a smile, and then drifted away. Samuel watched the other party's figure disappear outside the red wall, thinking secretly. Eyes and ears, is this calling my attention to Varys the Octocod? Chapter 121 Party. Samuel walked in the dark corridors of the Red Castle, thinking about what Petter Baelish said just now. Actually, from Petter's point of view, Samuel is regarded as one of his own. After all, the two shared a little secret. Of course, in Petter's eyes, one of our own should be sold if necessary. Now, as Samuel is a rookie, who has just arrived in King's Landing, Petter will definitely try to win him over first, and it is estimated that he will give Samwell some small favors, so that Samwell will wholeheartedly charge for him. But it was absolutely impossible for Petter to guess that Samwell had already seen through his whole plot and knew that he was the real culprit who murdered Duke John Arryn. This lack of information is Samwell's biggest advantage today. He must use this advantage as much as possible to deal with the most ambitious schemer in Game of Thrones. This is also the primary purpose of his visit to King's Landing this time. This is not only to avenge being manipulated by him as a pawn, but also a decision made by Samwell after careful consideration. Littlefinger's goal is the chaos of the Seven Kingdoms, so he can fish in troubled waters and take advantage of the situation. But this is not what Samwell wants to see, at least not what he wants to see now. Although chaos is an opportunity for every ambitious person, if you want to fish in troubled waters and even climb up, you must have enough strength to support it. And now Samwell seems to lack confidence. The time he came out to open up is too short, the castles in the territory have not been fully built. The number of troops is not large enough, the attribute panel also needs time to upgrade, and the territory of the Dane family, he has not yet fully controlled. Anyway, he needs time. Originally, his time was already tight enough, but Littlefinger was still fanning the flames, forcing John Arryn to die a year earlier. Doesn't this mean that Samwell lost another year of farming development time? Although Samwell also wants chaos, what he wants is a controllable small-scale chaos, so that he can have room to display and grab enough benefits. Like the previous battle of Starfall City, it is perfect. But if an all-out war of the scale of the War of the Five Kings breaks out, with Samwell's current strength, he can only follow the Huon army to fight soy sauce. At that time, no matter how brave he is in the battle, the territory and interests will still belong to Mr. Inflatable Fish. At most, he will get some flashy glory. This kind of loss-making business cannot be done. So when he came to King's Landing this time, besides taking revenge on Littlefinger, he also wanted to try his best to prevent the situation of the Seven Kingdoms from completely collapsing in a short period of time. Of course, Samwell didn't come to be an envoy of peace. He is also a careerist himself, but a cautious careerist. He knows that if he wants to rise quickly, he also needs chaos within a controllable range. For example, the Iron Throne crusade against Dorne, such chaos is very appropriate. Samwell now has a foothold in the west of Dorne, and already has the basis to plot Dorne. But he also knows how difficult it is for outsiders to conquer Dorne. The Martell family saying, unyielding, unyielding, and unyielding, is not a joke. Therefore, he must use external forces to weaken Dun as much as possible. To provoke the Iron Throne against Dorne, the dirty water of John Arryn's death must be poured on the Red Viper. As for saying that this is unfair to the Red Viper, Samwell has no interest in clearing his enemies of suspicion, and the Red Viper is not an innocent little white rabbit, and he will definitely be the one who conquers Dorne in the future. A stumbling block in the way, so it's best to get rid of it. However, in this way, Samwell's methods of dealing with Littlefinger will be limited. After all, the truth about John's death cannot be used to deal with this person. Samwell actually already has a rough plan, but he still needs to meet several important people in it. For example, the incoming hand of the king, Duke Eddard Stark. This person is very important to Samwell's plan. He must confirm whether this person's behavior style is really as upright as in the original book to the point of rigidity. Oh, by the way, besides this, there is an annoying little fly, Hopper Redwin. Samwell is going to set up a trap and slap him to death. While thinking about it, Samwell had already come to the garden, and then found Marjorie talking and laughing with Natalie. The heads of the two girls are almost together, and their attitude is extremely close. I am afraid that no one will believe that they are sisters. Beside them sat two brothers from the Redwin family. Horace didn't hang his arms this time, but he saw the sweat on his forehead and his twitching cheeks from time to time. Well, he probably regretted it now. For the sake of demeanor, he didn't want his arms. It was really cruel. Huobo stretched his neck long, as if he really wanted to join the conversation between the two ladies, but he couldn't find an entry point, and his anxiety was written all over his face. The two brothers were sitting beside Mark Mullendal. The eldest son of the Highland city looked leisurely, drinking tea and feeding the monkey on his shoulder with nuts. Sean, Master Caesar. Natalie was the first to notice Samuel's approach. She wanted to run over to greet her, but she sat down quickly. It seemed that seeing the crowd, she began to pay attention to reserve, and even changed her name, became official. Sam, come and sit. Marjorie was still so enthusiastic, and her smile was still so sweet, like a summer rose. Samuel stepped forward to greet everyone one by one, then sat down beside Natalie, and asked, "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about your flaming sword," Marjorie said with a smile. "So it's the Dane family's inherited great sword, Dawn. This is the first time I've heard that someone has used the inherited great sword as collateral." Seeing Marjorie's narrow gaze, Samuel couldn't help but blush, but he still pretended to be calm. And said, "The main reason is that no one will use that sword in Starfall City, so I will use it first to avoid waste." "That's right." Natalie nodded again and again, and chimed in, "Sam is really good with that sword. It can make the sword catch fire." "What's so strange about the fire sword?" Hopper couldn't help but said, "The red-robed monks in the free trade cities on the other side of the narrow sea know how to do this. They smear wildfire, or similar combustibles on the sword, and then ignite it to intimidate the enemy. In fact, the power is average." Samuel was about to respond when he heard a male voice from a distance. "It's really average. I once personally killed a red-robed monk who used a fire sword, and that guy's sword broke after burning." When everyone turned their heads, they saw three figures walking over. The person headed by it was none other than Princess Ariane, accompanied by Dark Star, Jello, Dane, and Damon Shad, the illegitimate son of God's Grace City. These two Dornay knights were also captured by the Riverbend people during the Battle of Starfall. But they were later redeemed by the Martell family. Samuel was quite impressed with the Dark Star, with black and silver hair. Because this person is the eldest son of Viscount Pelong of Jaoyan City, he also contributed the most in the Battle of Starfall City last time, and of course suffered the heaviest loss as a result. Not only did she fail to inherit Starfall City, but she even lost her hometown, Jaoyan City, after Natalie officially became the Earl of Starfall City. She confided Jaoyan City to Hughes Dane. So, without thinking about it, this Geraldine must be full of hatred at this time. It was this person who spoke just now. "Dornish people, why don't you pray in the great sept of Baelor? What are you doing here?" Horace shouted loudly, as if blaming the pain in his arm on the Dornish people. "Yeah, here is a gathering of people from the River Bend, and you are not welcome." Mark Mullendal also continued, "The people of the River Bend have always been united in dealing with the Dornish people." Samuel felt that he should also be more gregarious, so he also answered, "Is it because the gods are unwilling to respond to your confession, so you ran out to find other ways to escape?" Ha ha ha. Amidst the laughter, the hot-tempered Princess Ariane was rarely angry, and the smile on her face was as bright as ever, as if she didn't hear the ridicule from the people in the River Bay. "Everyone, whether my uncle is guilty or not, will be judged by His Majesty himself. As for our coming this time, we are adhering to the last wish of Duke John Arryn before he died, peace." Hearing that Princess Ariane moved Duke John out, the people of the Riverbend couldn't laugh anymore. Samuel looked at the Dornay princess, who looked like a different person, and was a little surprised. "This is a beating, a big change in personality. Your Royal Highness." Margaret stood up abruptly, and said politely, "We in Huon have always loved peace, but peace has never just spoken. How do you, Dunn, prove your sincerity? The Martell family has recognized Earl Natalie's rule over Starfall City. This is our greatest sincerity. In addition, Sir Gerald, as a member of the Dane family, is now willing to pledge his allegiance to Miss Natalie." Quote, as soon as Princess Ariane finished speaking, Geraldine came to Natalie and knelt down, saying loudly, "Dear Miss Natalie Dane, I, Geraldine, would like to offer you my unparalleled loyalty." Natalie was a little surprised, but she has experience now, unlike before when she always went to see Samuel or her mother when she encountered such a situation. "I accept your allegiance." Samuel frowned as he watched from the sidelines. It seems that the Martell family still hasn't given up on Starfall City. They talk about peace, but they end up doing things like mixing sand. However, Jarrow's surname is Dane after all, and Natalie is really not easy to refuse when he swears allegiance in public. As for who this guy is loyal to, it's hard to say. Samuel felt that he wanted to remind Natalie privately later to be on guard against this person. After the allegiance ceremony was over, Jero did not get up immediately, but took out a pink rose from his bosom and sent it to Natalie. Miss Natalie, I am dazzled by your beauty. This rose represents my heart and is for you. Now Samuel frowned even tighter. Good guy, it's not just mixed with sand, this is to pick peaches directly. Natalie was really at a loss this time. She didn't want to accept the rose in her heart, but she was embarrassed to reject a knight who had just sworn allegiance to her. Just then, Hope Redwin spoke. Sir Gerald, don't you see that Miss Natalie doesn't like your roses? Put the flowers away soon. Zero immediately narrowed his eyes and turned to look at Hooper. Hopper looked at him without flinching. The strong smell of gunpowder diffused. Samuel watched this scene from the side, and a faint smile suddenly appeared on the corner of his mouth. Look, the scapegoat is here. You can swat the flies. Chapter 122 Ribbons. Come on, Hooper, kill the Dornish people. On the training ground of the Red Keep, Hopper Redwin was wearing the armor with the help of his attendants while receiving the cheers from the nobles of the Reach. Hopper, get rid of him. Samuel also joined the crowd, yelling in fear of chaos. The development of the matter was even smoother than he expected. Hopper Redwin and Gerald Dane, two vigorous young men, went directly to the arena for a fight even if they disagreed. Of course, this is not a life-and-death duel, but it is enough to intensify the conflict between the two and fully demonstrate it in front of everyone. This is simply an assist for Samuel's scapegoat plan. Hopper, for the glory of the Reach, kill the Dornishmen. The two Tyrell brothers, Garland and Loras, couldn't see anyone when they were drinking tea just now, but now they don't know where they came from when they heard that there was going to be a contest. Out. Not only the two of them, but almost all the nobles of the Riverbend who came to King's Landing. This time, Sir Aemon of Sunhouse City, Sir Alarcon of Brightwater City, who is Samuel's uncle. But Earl Randall of Hornhill did not come, only a few vassal knights. Samuel also knows them all. Before the Battle of Starfall City, these people all charged behind him. They told Samuel that Earl Randall was ill, so he could not come to King's Landing. This is obviously an excuse. But Samuel can understand his father. After all, he has an old grievance with King Robert. In the War of the Reavers, Robert's only defeat was given by Earl Randall. If we meet again, Robert will probably yell and fight Earl Randall again when he is drunk. So it's better not to come. Who do you want to win? Margaret held Natalie's hand and asked with a smile. Natalie didn't know how to answer. She is the Lord of Dorne, and Gerald Dane has just sworn allegiance to her. It stands to reason that she should stand on Dorne's side. But Miss Marjorie treats her so well, and Samuel is from the River Bend. Natalie suddenly fell into a tangle. I do not know either. How can you not know? These two knights are fighting for you. Then let them all win. Both win. That's not all lose. Samuel didn't know for a while whether Natalie's answer was wise or foolish, or Marjorie laughed and said, Natalie, you are too kind. There are winners and losers in the martial arts field, and it is impossible to win all of them. But you can lose both. Samuel snickered aside. Suddenly, he felt a little bit of the happy mood of Littlefinger, Petter Baelish when he hid in a dark corner and watched others fight to death. Is this the happiness of Lao Yinbi? No. Samuel quickly shook off the thought. How can I be an old yin coin like Littlefinger? I am a sunny boy. Dear Miss Natalie. Geraldine had finished dressing at some point, and rode to Natalie before bowing. Can you please give me a token? Natalie was a little confused. It wasn't until Marjorie smiled and whispered a few words in her ear that she realized it. Today's Natalie is wearing a cute fringed braid with pink ribbons wrapped around it. She took one of them and handed it to Jello. Jello tied the ribbon around his wrist, and then said impassionedly, Thank you, beautiful Miss Natalie, I will fight for your glory. Hopper watched from the side with his eyes burning, and ran over to ask for the token. Natalie had to take off another ribbon and brought it to him. Finally, the two knights fighting for Natalie's honor entered the arena with their tokens. After a gong sounded, the two started to accelerate at the same time. Tap tap, the hoofbeats of the horses were hurried, and the distance between the two knights was shortening crazily. Natalie was so scared that she closed her eyes. Boom! There was a loud noise, followed by the Dornish people cheering and celebrating. Natalie carefully opened her eyes, only to find that the Hopper Knight was already lying on the ground, and the shield painted with the purple grape emblem flew far away, while Geraldine was galloping on the field on a fine horse, accepting the cheers of the crowd. Fool! Natalie heard someone curse in a low voice from the Riverbend camp, but unfortunately she didn't know who cursed. Trash! Someone cursed again. Natalie saw clearly this time, it was actually Sir Garland of the Tyrell family. She stuck out her tongue, looked away, and then saw Horace and his attendants running over to help Hopper up from the ground, but Hopper's helmet fell out of shape and was stuck on his head and couldn't be removed. Holding Hopper's helmet and pulling it out, like pulling a carrot. Natalie couldn't help laughing. At this moment, Geraldine came to Natalie, thinking that the bright smile on the goddess's face was blooming for him, and his heart was filled with joy and pride. Miss Natalie, please allow me to dedicate this victory to you. Although its glory is far less dazzling than your beauty. Natalie saw Jero now, and politely pulled up her skirt, saying, "Thank you, Sir Gerald." Jero Dane. Garland Tyrell couldn't help shouting, "Come on, let me compete with you." Before Zero could speak, Princess Ariane stood up and said, "Sir Garland, do you want to fight for Miss Natalie?" Garland is already engaged, so he was stunned by these words for a while before saying, "I'm fighting for the River Bend." Princess Ariane intentionally put on an aggrieved look, and said, "Huon and Dorne have just reached peace, so it's not good for you to do this." Marjorie stood up to smooth things over at this moment. "Okay, brother, let's stop today's contest. Otherwise the Dornish people will think we can't afford to lose." "Sir Gerald, you are indeed an outstanding knight." Geraldine saluted Marjorie in a gentlemanly manner. The two sides did not continue to quarrel and left one after another. In the end, only a group of Redwyn family members were still pulling carrots. Ellipsis. Several River Bend nobles returned to the garden and drank tea. It was not until the sun was sinking that Samwell took Natalie to say goodbye to the rest. "Sam, are Hopper and Jero pursuing me?" On the way back, Natalie held Samwell's arm and asked with her head raised. "Otherwise why would they fight for you?" Samwell asked with a smile, "Which of these two do you like?" "I don't like any of them." "Why, are they not good enough?" "Not really." Natalie kicked the stones under her feet. Sir Hopper was born noble, but his speech was vague and seemed a bit silly. As for Sir Gerald, well, although he is also a Dane, but I always feel that he is weird, and his eyes always make me feel uncomfortable. That's such a pity. Sir Hopper and Sir Gerald will be heartbroken when they hear the news. Then don't tell them. Good guy, you still want to raise fish. What kind of fish? Natalie looked up in doubt, with clear confusion in her eyes. Samwell shook his head secretly. This girl should not be of such a high rank. It's nothing. Don't tell if you don't tell, let them have unrequited love. Okay, Natalie nodded, but soon she seemed to finally realize that it was wrong to do so. Isn't this not good? If I don't say it all the time, Sir Hopper and Sir Gerald will keep pursuing I'd better refuse them. Okay, but Natalie got tangled up again. But, how should I refuse? Would it hurt their hearts too much if I said it directly? Simple, Samwell said with a smile. Just give them an impossible test. A test that cannot be completed. Yes, for example, you can say that you only want to marry a knight who can conquer a dragon. Good idea. Natalie smiled happily, but then she worried again. But what if he really conquered a giant dragon? Everyone can conquer the dragon, so you should marry obediently. Oh, Natalie pouted, seemingly displeased. After turning a corner, Samwell stopped. Okay, your room is here, go to bed early. Natalie hesitated for a moment, then suddenly asked, Sam, can you subdue a dragon? Samwell laughed. There are no dragons now, silly girl. What if there are more? Then I will beat it up. After Samwell finished speaking, he rubbed Natalie's head and messed up her hair. Natalie barked her teeth and claws to protest, but it was useless. You dropped the ribbons. It's loose anyway, throw it away. Oh, ellipsis. Dark Star. Geraldine returned to his residence, the excitement in his heart could not be calmed down. After ordering the servant to prepare bath water, he came to the desk and sat down, picked up a pen and wrote a long letter to his father in Dorne. I will take back everything that belongs to us. He wrote in the letter. After writing the letter, Jello began to undress to take a shower. When he touched the ribbon on his wrist, Gialuo couldn't help showing a smug smile again. He untied the ribbon, put it under his nose and smelled it. It is a fresh and elegant violet scent. Jello carefully put away the ribbon, took a shower, and changed into dry clothes. After packing up, he came out to seal the letter with wax, and was about to find someone to mail it, but when he opened the door, he found a pink ribbon slowly floating down from the crack of the door. Jello reached out to catch it, only to realize that it was exactly the same ribbon as the one Miss Natalie had given him before. Moreover, there seems to be words on the ribbon. 10 o'clock tonight, Godswood. Gialuo's breathing suddenly became rapid. This is Miss Natalie asking me to meet next month. Jello's heart beat faster suddenly. Oh, my dear Miss Natalie, looking at your usual reserved appearance, it turns out that you are still a hot and enthusiastic Dornish woman in your bones. Jello put the ribbon under his nose and took a deep breath. Oh, and that intoxicating violet scent. Chapter 123 Scapegoat. King's Landing under the night faded away from the hustle and bustle of the day, presenting a quiet beauty. 9 o'clock tonight, Godswood. Hopper Redwyn took out the pink ribbon and looked at it again. Although it was hard to believe that Miss Natalie was still willing to ask herself out under such circumstances, Hopper soon found a reason for herself. He is also the second son of Qingting Island, and his identity and family background are much stronger than that free knight Geraldine who lost his family territory. Miss Natalie really still has vision. When a man meets an attractive woman, he always overestimates his own charm. Hopper is certainly no exception. Under the cold moonlight, full of excitement, he embarked on the road to the appointment. The Godswood Forest is located in the southeast corner of the Red Castle. It is a rare and secluded place in the castle. The forest is full of elms, cypresses and cottonwoods. After all, this is not the northern border, so there is no weirwood that represents the belief of the old gods. Even so, when Huo Bo, who believed in the 7 gods, walked in here, he felt an indescribable discomfort. It seems that there are really ancient gods watching themselves through the invisible eyes on the tree. Hobo pulled the cloak on his body, drew a 7-pointed star on his chest with his right hand, and prayed secretly, "Merciful Mother, please grant me a beautiful wife. It would be even more perfect if she also carried a castle." He secretly added another sentence in his heart. The forest is quiet and peaceful, only the rustling sound of Hopper stepping on the leaves. Miss Natalie, Miss Natalie, Hopper called softly a few times, but got no response. It shouldn't be here yet, I'm here early. He forced himself to hold back his impatience and waited patiently, while thinking about how to express love later without appearing abrupt. Time passed bit by bit. Hopper heard distant bells coming from beyond the Godswood. Time is up, but what about Miss Natalie? Huo Bo was preparing to search again when he suddenly heard a small voice. He was overjoyed, and hurried to the depths of the Godswood forest. Finally, under a big oak tree covered with smokeberry vines, he vaguely saw half a figure. Miss Natalie. Hopper walked a few steps quickly, but then slowed down again so as not to appear too impatient. However, when he walked under the oak tree, he found that the figure of the man was not right. "You're not nah." Hope saw the man turn around. "Samuel. What the asterisk are you doing?" Samuel smiled faintly. "Don't be nervous, Miss Natalie asked me to ask you out." Hopper looked at Samuel suspiciously, and said vigilantly, "Really, why did she do that?" "She wants to ask you a question." Samuel said calmly. "What is the problem? That day at sea, what did you deliberately lure the pirates over?" Hearing this, Huo Bo shrank his pupils suddenly, and immediately denied. "Samuel Caesar, I don't know what you're talking about." Samuel took a step closer. "You want the pirates to kill me?" Huo Bo realized something was wrong, turned around suddenly and was about to run out. But in the next second, his neck was tightly grasped by a big iron-like hand. The power was so great that Hopper could hardly breathe. Before he begged for mercy, he heard Samuel whispering in his ear. "Since this is the case, then I can only let others kill you." Before Hopper understood the meaning of this sentence, he felt a sharp pain in his throat. He managed to let out a small, weak gasp, and then the gushing blood blocked the throat. The belated fear flooded Hopper's rationality like a tide, and he never thought that Samuel would actually dare to kill himself. He struggled to call for help, but his throat was already blocked by blood. In extreme pain, Hopper could only stare at Samwell with hatred, as if saying, "Father will avenge me." I don't know if Samwell read this meaning from his eyes, and said with a chuckle, "Earl Paxter will avenge you, but not me." A trace of doubt crossed Hopper's mind, but soon, complete darkness enveloped him. Samwell carefully placed Hopper's body in the shadow behind the oak tree, took the ribbon off his body, and left quietly. Ellipsis. 10 o'clock tonight, Godswood. Geraldine caressed the ribbon, read the words on it softly, and couldn't wait in his heart. So it was just after 9:30, and he came to the Godswood alone. The forest was dark and silent, and there was no one in sight. Shouldn't have come so early. Jello suddenly regretted it. Being bored, he just strolled casually in the forest. But as he was walking, Gialuo suddenly smelled a ****** smell. He stopped. Perhaps a wounded beast. Jello comforted himself too much, but cautiously walked in the direction of the smell. Soon, he came to the huge oak tree deep in the Godswood, and saw a figure in the shadows. It turned out to be a person. No, it's a corpse. What happened? Jello quickly pulled out the dagger that he carried with him, and leaned over carefully. By the faint moonlight shining among the leaves, he finally saw the face of the corpse. Hopper Redwin. He is dead. During the day, the Chinting Island knight who had just fought against him turned into a corpse. Jello suddenly looked at the ribbon in his hand, and immediately realized something was wrong. It's a trap. Fear and anger surged into my heart instantly, before Gialuo could figure out how to deal with it. A black shadow suddenly jumped down from the treetops. Jello was terrified, and quickly rolled over on the spot, but still felt a sharp pain in his hand. When he stood still again, he realized that the one who attacked him just now was actually a falcon. At this moment, it is looking at itself with a very humane gaze. Quote, a clear cry of an eagle pierced the silent night sky like a sword. Also scared Jero half to death, because he knew that if this movement attracted the guards, he would not be able to speak clearly even if he had 100 mouths. Didn't dare to think about it at all, and Zero ran out of the Godswood. But that damned falcon was chasing after him, attacking him, and making noises continuously. As if it wanted to make some noise on purpose. Damn bird. Jello didn't dare to get entangled with the falcon at all, so he could only protect his head and run wildly. The falcon didn't let Jero go until he was about to run out of the Godswood. This movement must have alarmed the gold-cloaked guards. Jello cursed again, stopped quickly, adjusted his breathing, and said, "It's me, Jello of the Dane family. Good evening, Sir Gerald." A gold-cloaked guard asked, "What's wrong with you?" At this moment, countless thoughts rolled through Gialuo's mind. But in the end, he decided to tell the truth. After all, the guards have already seen him. If he doesn't explain clearly, then he will not be able to remove the suspicion. It's just that when Jero went to find the ribbon with the meeting information written on it, he couldn't find it anymore. Did it lose it while fighting with the eagle? It. Jello was so depressed that he went crazy. "Sir Gerald, are you okay?" The gold-cloaked guard asked again when he saw that the other party kept his head down and remained silent. "I'm fine." Jero forced a stiff smile. "I just accidentally fell in the forest." After speaking, he strode away. At this moment, Gialuo had only one thought in his mind: run. The most important evidence is lost. He really can't explain it now, he has to run. Before the golden-robed guard could react, escape from King's Landing, escape from Westeros, and escape to the other side of the narrow sea. Looking at Gialuo, who was leaving in a hurry, several gold-cloaked guards looked at each other, as if they sensed something was wrong. So they went to the Godswood. Ellipsis. Hearing the faint shouts coming from behind, Geraldine ran even faster. The cool night wind howled in his ears, and the ancient buildings receded behind him. Jello knew that the gate of the Red Castle must be closed at this time, and he was not qualified to order the guards to open the gate for him alone. So, he followed the dark path to the northeast corner of the Red Keep. The White Sword Tower towering on the city wall came into view. The Kingsguard followed the king to Winterfell, so there should be no one in this tower now. Jello pushed open the wooden door, and then froze. There is actually a dozing guard inside the door. "Who is it?" "It's me, Jero of the Dane family. I can't sleep at night, so I come to pay my respects to the demeanor of the white knights of the past generations. Okay, Sir Gerald, please come in. Jello tried his best to pretend to be calm, and spiraled up the spiral staircase. Fortunately, there is no one else in the tower. Jello walked quickly to the top of the tower and looked out of the window. The sword tower is higher than the city wall, so as long as you go out from here, you can escape. From the Red Castle. Of course, at this height, Gialuo would not dare to jump directly, as he would fall to death. He found a rope, threw one end out of the window, and fixed the other end inside the window. Hearing the loud noise coming from outside, Gialuo didn't dare to stop for a moment, and hurriedly climbed down along the rope. Halfway through the climb, Gialuo suddenly heard a familiar eagle cry. As soon as he turned his head, he saw a black shadow pounced on him like the scythe of death. No, ellipsis. What happened? Samuel walked out of the room in his pajamas and asked the 7 or 8 nobles gathered outside. I don't know, it seems that the golden robe is looking for someone. Horace replied casually with his arms hanging. Samuel stepped forward to stand side by side with the eldest son of Qingting Island, and asked with concern, how's the injury on your hand? It's okay, a little injury. That's good. Samuel looked at it for a while, and suddenly said, by the way, where is Hopper? Was he seriously injured in the afternoon? He's fine. Horace looked back at his brother's dark room. I'm probably asleep. That's good. The corners of Samuel's mouth rose slightly. Just sleep. Several people watched for a while, and finally a gold-robed guard ran over and said, which one is Sir Horace? I am. Horace stepped forward because he didn't understand. What's wrong? The gold-cloaked guard sighed. I am sorry that your brother, Sir Hope, has unfortunately passed away. My brother? What are you talking about? Horace suddenly reached out and grabbed the collar of the gold-cloaked guard. Due to the excessive movement, the wound was torn and painful. Can you say that again? Sir, please calm down. We found the body of your brother Sir Hopper in the Godswood. Horace felt his world spinning for a while, and all the sounds in his ears seemed to become extremely distant. After a while, he came back to his senses and asked in a hissing voice. Who did it? Who did it? We suspect it is Sir Gerald of House Dane. Chapter 124 Trial. Sam, I'm so scared. Natalie said pitifully. She looked a little pale, and it seemed that she didn't sleep well last night. Don't worry, this matter has nothing to do with you. Samuel held Natalie's cold little hand and comforted him. But, Sir Gerald just swore his allegiance to me, and then unexpectedly. That was also his personal behavior, and has nothing to do with you. At most, as a lord, you can sincerely apologize to the Redwyn family and express your condolences. Then what if the Redwyn family doesn't want to accept my apology? That's why they messed around. The kingdom's laws don't stipulate that the crimes committed by the vassals need to be borne by the king. Natalie nodded, her complexion improved slightly. Samuel pointed to the food in front of her, and said, hurry up and eat something, we'll be interviewed later. Oh, Natalie picked up the white bread in front of her and took a bite, and said quietly after a while, so, they all died because of me, right? It really is. Don't think too much about it. Samuel touched the little girl's soft hair. It's not your fault. Besides, there are not a few knights who have always paid the price of their lives for competing for the favor of ladies. Thinking about the best, doesn't that just show that your charm is irresistible? But I don't want to do this. Natalie puffed her cheeks, as if she had made up her mind. Next time I will never allow others to fight for me, let alone give them tokens. I should directly reject them. Samuel laughed loudly. Yes, this can indeed save a lot of trouble. Eat quickly, the time is coming. Natalie then concentrated on her breakfast, but she obviously had no appetite today. She only ate half a slice of bread, an egg, and drank a glass of milk. After the meal, Samuel took Natalie to Mager's mansion. Such a vile murder case occurred in the Red Castle, and 2 nobles were involved. Naturally, a court trial was required to identify the murderer and clarify the responsibilities. The trial was held in the throne room. Following the golden cloak guards pushing open the huge bronze oak door, Samuel walked in with Natalie on his arm. This is the first time he has come to the power center of the 7 kingdoms. A long red carpet extends from the gate to the end of the hall, where there is a high iron platform, on which is the famous Iron Throne. The throne hall is large enough to hold hundreds of people. Stepping on the thick and soft carpet, Samwell walked towards the Iron Throne step by step. The closer you get to it, the more you can feel a cold and chilling aura. It is said that the Iron Throne, which symbolizes the ruling power of the Seven Kingdoms, was created by the giant dragon, Black Death, Balerion the Conqueror, Aegon Targaryen, using dragon flames to melt thousands of swords used by the enemies when they surrendered. As a result, it is covered with all kinds of twisted and sharp spikes and sharp horns. This is by no means a comfortable chair. Aegon the Conqueror didn't want it to be a comfortable chair either. In his opinion, the king should not be able to sit comfortably. In history, many kings were cut or even killed by this chair. For example, it is said that Maegor I died on this iron chair, but even so, it still cannot stop countless people from yearning and coveting it. Sam, Natalie, Marjorie Tyrell walked towards him, just blocking Samwell's view of the Iron Throne. This Geoting Rose is wearing a slim black dress today, with red crystals in the shape of tears dotted on his chest, and his soft brown curly hair is also coiled up high, looking solemn and elegant. I'm sorry this happened. Marjorie gave Natalie a hug and kissed her tenderly on the cheek. Thank you, Miss Marjorie. Natalie managed to force a smile. Marjorie hugged Natalie's other arm, and while leading her inside, comforted her. Don't worry, today's trial is presided over by Lord Renly, the Minister of Justice. Loras has already told me in secret. Lord Renly believes that the situation of the case is basically clear. It was Gerald Dane who killed Hobber in the Godswood, Redwyn, but he too fell to his death from a tower while fleeing the Red Keep. The seven have made the murderer pay. Natalie nodded upon hearing this, feeling much more at ease. Samwell also smiled slightly in his heart. At this moment, a lot of people have gathered in the hall. The nobles who watched the match between Gerald and Hooper yesterday are basically all present. Horace hung his arms and stood in the front row miserably, staring at the several Dornish nobles opposite him, as if he wanted to swallow them alive. The nobles of the riverbend around him also glared at the Dornishmen. Dorne was led by Princess Arianne. When she faced the anger of the nobles in the river bend, she showed restraint. She didn't confront her, but bowed her head in silence. And the Red Viper, Prince Oberyn, still didn't show up. I don't know if he went to the Great Sept of Baelor to pray again. To be honest, it was hard for Samwell to imagine how someone like Red Viper prayed devoutly in front of the statue of the seven gods. Seeing Natalie appearing in the hall, everyone had complicated expressions. Because this incident seems to have started because of this countess, and one of them is also a vassal knight of the countess. Fortunately, Samwell and Marjorie protected Natalie from left to right, otherwise Horace would probably come forward to question her. Natalie also kept her head down, not daring to face the eyes of everyone. After she stood still, she realized that she had actually come to the queue of the nobles of the river bend. The little girl hesitated for a while, but still didn't dare to run to the opposite Dorne camp, although logically speaking, she was actually the Lord of Dorne. Of course Samwell and Marjorie would not let her go. These two actually wanted to use this method to declare to everyone the current position of the Dane family. Although the Dornish people were full of anger about this, there was nothing they could do. While waiting, several cabinet ministers from the Imperial Council also appeared one after another, came to the high platform in front of the hall, and stood beside the Iron Throne. Headed by the Attorney General, Lord Renly Baratheon. The king's younger brother is wearing a dark green velvet dress, with a jumping crowned stag painted on the heart position on his chest. His eyes swept across the hall slowly, and said in a deep voice, "Gentlemen, we are gathered here today to hear the murder of Esser Hopper Redwyn on the Arbor." Esser Jonos Slint, Janos, commander of the Capital Guard, stepped forward and saluted, "Lord Renly." Duke Renly nodded in return, and asked, "Tell me about what the guards found." "Yes, my lord, at about 10 o'clock yesterday, a group of guards under me heard the sound of eagles singing in the Godswood forest. Eagle chirping." Hearing this, Chief Intelligence Officer Varys interrupted, "Sir Janos, eagles don't come out at night, so are you sure it's the eagle chirping?" Genos froze for a moment, "Maybe it's night owl." Samwell was also slightly taken aback, unexpectedly leaving a small opening. However, he was not worried. This small problem would not cause him to overturn. Unless Varys was the reincarnation of Holmes, it would be impossible to find him with this clue. Sure enough, Varys did not continue to ask, but nodded to Genos to continue. Afterwards, my men went to the Godswood to check, and just happened to meet Gerald Dane, who came out of the forest. He looked flustered, and there were bloodstains on his body. When questioned, he insisted that he accidentally fell, and left in a hurry. The guards felt that something was wrong, so they went into the Godswood to check, and they found that Sir Hobber Redwyne was brutally killed under an oak tree. After I got the news, I immediately ordered the castle to be sealed off and searched for Geraldine. This person was also very vigilant. Knowing that the matter had been revealed, he tried to escape from the White Sword Tower, but maybe the seven gods couldn't tolerate this behavior. So he fell to his death under the city wall. Quote, "Did he fall himself?" asked Lord Renly. "It should be." At that time, he lowered the rope from the window on the top of the tower and tried to climb out of the city wall along the rope, but he probably slipped his hand halfway and fell to his death. At this time, Grand Maester Pycelle added, "When we inspected the body of Geraldine, we found a lot of scratches on his body, which looked like marks left by eagles, but we didn't know where the marks were. What was left in the Godswood forest was the attack he suffered while climbing the city wall. If it was the latter, perhaps his fall to death was not an accident." "So there really is an eagle?" Varys asked softly. "There should be." Duke Renly shrugged. "Perhaps the eagle is the messenger sent by the seven gods." Janos echoed. "My lord, I think so too. Geraldine dared to do such a sinful thing, and he was still in the Godswood. No wonder the gods will be angry." Samwell quietly praised the wit of the two. The rest of the people didn't say anything more. After all, it seemed that this incident was undoubtedly done by Geraldine. As for the doubtful point of the eagle, in the belief environment of Westeros, it is not at all inconsistent to interpret it as a miracle. Okay, the ins and outs of this case are already clear. Duke Renly concluded. Geraldine and Hobber Redwyne had a grudge against each other, and then they met in the Godswood. The conflict broke out again. Gerald didn't know whether it was intentional or by accident. He killed Huo Bo, and then fell to his death while trying to escape. Ladies and gentlemen, what else do you want to say? At this moment, Horace Redwyne stepped forward and said, "Master Renly, did Geraldine kill my brother? Was he instigated by others?" Hearing this, Samwell obviously felt Natalie beside him tremble slightly. The little girl's psychological quality is a bit poor. The real murderer, didn't panic. Why are you panicking?" Duke Renly asked in a deep voice. "Who do you think Geraldine was instructed by?" Horace reached out and pointed in the direction of Princess Arianne, angrily said, "I suspect it's a Dornishman." Chapter 125 Welcome. "Sir Horace." Princess Arianne raised her almond eyes. "What evidence do you have that I ordered Gerald to do such a thing?" Before Horace could speak, he heard Littlefinger, Petter Baelish on the high platform whisper, "Actually, I have always had a doubt. Why did Sir Hopper go to the Godswood? How could he just meet Geraldine? This is indeed a very critical issue." Samwell was not too worried, because he had taken back and destroyed the two ribbons with words on them. This kind of key evidence was gone, and he didn't believe anyone could doubt him. However, Petter, who is afraid of chaos in the world, seems to want to use this to make something happen. In fact, when Samwell planned this murder, he thought about whether to drag Princess Arianne into the water as well. He definitely didn't mind giving Dorndor some hatred, but out of prudence, he still didn't make any extra points. After all, this is his first time playing with conspiracy design, and it is incomparable with those old silver coins who are proficient in this. If the design is too complicated, it will easily reveal more flaws and cause unnecessary trouble. Sure enough, as soon as Petter finished speaking, Horace echoed, "That's right, Lord Petter, I had the same doubts before. Moreover, I know that Princess Arianne still pretended to visit my brother after the martial arts match yesterday. It is very likely that she took this opportunity to ask my brother out. See you tonight." Princess Arianne also had some anger on her face. "Sir Horace, your slander is simply baseless. What reason do I have to ask your brother out? My younger brother was frustrated because of his feelings just now, and it is the time when he is sad. With your status and beauty, you only need to seduce him a little." Horace. Arianne was furious. Just your idiot brother, is it worth my seduction? Horus immediately retorted, HMPH. Who knows? How long have you been an adult, your Highness? Why haven't you been married? Could it be that you can't find a husband? Horus, you, okay. Lord Renly interrupted their bickering. He first gave Horus a soothing look, then looked at Princess Ariane, and asked, Your Highness Ariane, when you went to see Sir Hopper, were there other people around? Sir Demon is here. Damon Sand took a step forward when he heard the words, and said, Yes, Lord Renly. I was there at the time. Her Royal Highness just comforted Sir Hopper, and didn't have any other thoughts. Of course your own knight will help you speak. Horus said with a strange air. I can swear before the 7 gods. Princess Ariane said loudly. The oath of the Dornishman, hee. A River Bend knight sneered. As long as there are many benefactors, there will always be murder and death. Another River Bend knight said pointedly. The Dornishmen never knew true glory, and were never true knights. Yes, and Geraldine died so coincidentally. Why do I think you Dornish people are trying to silence you? This matter is a Dornish conspiracy from beginning to end. Ellipsis. Seeing the accusations made by the people of the Riverbend one after another, Princess Ariane almost gritted her silver teeth. She took a few deep breaths and forced herself to calm down. If it wasn't for her father's warning before she left, with her temper, she might have already drawn her sword and cut someone. Samwell was watching all this, and his mood was quite strange. If he hadn't planned this incident, he might suspect the Dornishman now. No way, this is the result of a bad reputation. Enough. Duke Renly yelled loudly, and ordered the gold-cloaked guards to hit the floor with their spears, making a tidy thud, and the chaos in the hall was stopped. The evidence for Juro Dane's killing of Haber Redwin is conclusive. As for whether he was instigated by someone behind him, there is no evidence for the time being. We cannot slander a nobleman because of this. This matter ends here. Seeing what Duke Renly said, everyone at the scene regained their calm. However, Horus still stared at Princess Ariane and the others with resentment. Obviously, the Arbor Island did not intend to stop here. Besides, Duke Renly said again when everyone became quiet, I just received news that His Majesty's car passed the neck 2 days ago and will arrive in King's Landing soon. I am going to lead a small team to meet him. You can come with me if you want. The King's southward team has come to the banks of the Trident River. At this time, the sky was just dawning, and everyone was busy pulling out camp and preparing to set off. Sansa Stark, the eldest daughter of the Duke of the North, led the little wolf lady on the path. She was wearing a blue velvet dress, and she had no gorgeous jewelry on her body, only a bracelet of freshly picked flowers on her wrist. The beautiful long maroon hair was neatly scattered behind her back, and there was a gentle smile on her delicate face like a porcelain doll, cute and soft. She found her sister Arya Stark and said, Arya, hurry up and change into a decent dress, the queen invited us to take a ride in her wheel palace today. I'm not going. Arya was helping her little wolf, Nymeria, to comb her hair. I'm going to look for rubies on the river beach later. Ruby, that's right. Arya rolled her eyes at her sister, you don't even know this. It was here that His Majesty Robert killed Rhaegar Targaryen, smashing the ruby on his armor with a hammer. Sansa glared at her younger sister, you are not allowed to find the ruby. The queen invited the 2 of us, you must go with me. I do not want it. Sister's stubbornness and ignorance made Sansa tremble with anger. But she knew that it was useless to lose her temper with Arya, and instead it would arouse her sister to fight against herself even more. So, she took a few deep breaths and smiled softly again. There are lemon cake and cocoa tea in the Queen's Wheel Palace. Sansa said in a seductive tone. Unexpectedly, Arya yelled, I don't like the Queen. Sansa's eyes widened, as if she couldn't believe her sister said such a thing. She was terrified. At this time, a voice came from behind. You don't like my mother. Sansa turned her head and saw Prince Joffrey appearing behind her at some point. She was so frightened that she became more and more at a loss, and froze on the spot for a long while without moving. And the younger sister Arya also knew that she had said something wrong, and just as her little wolf Nymeria ran out, she also took this opportunity to chase the little wolf and run away without a trace. Your Highness, do you need me to chase her back? Sansa heard a rough voice, and only then did she notice that there was someone behind Prince Joffrey, the Hound, Sandor Clegane. Half of the face of the prince's personal guard was completely disfigured by the fire, and he looked extremely frightened. Coupled with the terrible words he said, Sansa couldn't help trembling slightly. The wolf lady at the foot seemed to feel the master's fear, and stuck out her tongue to lick her palm. Shut up, Hound, you scared my fiancé. Prince Joffrey stepped forward and reprimanded. The loyal, Hound dog, bowed to his master, and stepped back quietly. Sansa looked at the handsome and polite prince in front of her, the fear in her heart disappeared immediately, and sweetness and joy surged up. This is my knight, my prince, and my future husband. He looks so good, and such a gentleman. In the future, I will be his queen and give birth to a prince and princess for him. Miss Sansa, are you all right? Joffrey asked again, seeing that the girl didn't respond for a long time. I'm fine, Your Highness. Thank you, it's my honor. Joffrey looked at the charming young girl in the twilight of the morning light, and smiled. My uncle, Lord Renly, brought people to welcome us. Let's go back and meet them. Okay. Sansa nodded again and again, leaving her sister Arya behind. Joffrey glanced at the direwolf under Sansa's feet. Put your pet here so as not to scare others. Okay. Sansa knelt down and hugged the little wolf, and said, Lady, sit down and wait for me. Here. As expected, the little wolf curled up his hind legs obediently and sat on the ground. Here comes the dog, Joffrey called. Sansa froze for a moment, and only realized when Sandor stepped forward that he was calling her guard. You are here to take care of Miss Sansa's pet. Yes, Your Highness, Sandor replied. The prince returned to the camp with his fiancée. The two talked and laughed along the way, and Sansa quickly forgot the little unhappiness just now. The Red Viper didn't come. What? He didn't dare to see me. Sansa heard King Robert's rough voice from afar. At this time, a group of people gathered outside the king's palace, and when she got closer, Sansa saw a handsome young man standing opposite the king. He was wearing dark green armor and holding a helmet with antlers. King is somewhat similar. Sansa guessed that this should be the king's younger brother, Duke Renly. She heard the duke say, Your Majesty, the Red Viper is repenting in the Hall of the Seven Gods. Bullshit, Robert said disdainfully. He will repent. I don't believe it. That guy must have sneaked off to some girl's house in King's Landing to have fun. Duke Renly smiled and said nothing, pointing sideways at Marjorie Tyrell and introducing. This is Miss Marjorie of the Tyrell family, daughter of the Duke of Metz. Your Majesty, please allow me to bring you the greetings of House Tyrell. Marjorie smiled sweetly and sent a bouquet of rose wreaths to the king. Mace, that ugly and fat guy actually gave birth to such a beautiful daughter as you. It seems that the grace of the gods is always so elusive. The wreath is good, I accept the kindness, but I have always only worn steel and iron. Something like that. Robert took the garland and passed it to the queen. Cersei, here you go. Cersei took it casually, but didn't put it on, but threw it to the maid beside her. Duke Renly continued to introduce the nobles who came to welcome the king. When it was Samwell's turn, King Robert stared at the Baron of Eagle Mouth, without speaking for a long while. Feeling the dignified atmosphere, everyone has different expressions, some are gloating, some are worried, and some are watching with cold eyes. Samwell was calm and composed, still with a smile on his face, leaning slightly to pay tribute to the king. Are you Randall Tarley's son? After a long while, the king spoke, but his tone was very cold. Yes, Your Majesty. Where is your father? Didn't come. Your Majesty, forgive me, my father is ill. Bullshit. Robert snapped mercilessly. Can you find a fresher reason? Samwell immediately told the truth. Your Majesty, you are right. In fact, my father didn't come. Just because he was worried about having another conflict with you. What? He dare not fight with me again. No. Samwell looked at the king, who seemed to be on the verge of rage, and his smile continued. He dare not win you again. As soon as this remark came out, the audience fell silent. But just when everyone thought the king would be furious, Robert suddenly laughed. Ha 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 ha, what a boy, you are so courageous, you are indeed the son of Lando Tarley.